We're doing this shit again. So, to those of you who have not been here for the other shit shooting Sundays, this is a free-form discussion. I'm glad to have y'all here. But before we proceed any further into this discussion about green anarchy and generally how valid that is, or just stateless environmentalism, how to protect the environment even though we don't have a government over us telling us to protect the environment. This discussion is brought to you by Liberty Mugs. Get these mugs to piss off your coworkers and friends and family, and spread a good message while you do it. You can click the link in the description so that you can get access to that site. Everybody who's not speaking, mute your mic real quick. One moment while we do this little housekeeping. I invited a ton of people, but only a few of them showed up. So, you got your mic muted there?
Hey guys.
Waiting for other people to get in. Okay, cool. All right, so this discussion is brought to you by Liberty Mugs. Go to the link in the description to get a mug that will piss off you and your coworkers. Maybe if you're a statist. I don't know why I phrased it that way. But get a mug there. You can also support the show by getting Brave browser. Every download supports the show with $5, so I would very much appreciate it if you would do so. Plus, it'll save you hours off your life and some money because it makes page loads faster. And it makes the entire experience of browsing the web a slight bit less toxic. You know, just a slight bit, because there's still people who support Obama out there. But those are ways you can support me. Also, there's a support link in there, various donation methods, and I sell shirts in case you haven't already been bombarded with my links. So, without further ado, let's get the people here introducing themselves. I don't care what order it is. This is freeform, chaos, and anarchy here.
Well, all right, I'll go first. I am the Anon Rando that commonly goes by the name of Conan, son of Conan. I'm just a regular, everyday guy who was always anti-state, but eventually with the wonders of Twitter and 4chan learned that I was not the only weirdo out there. So I have dedicated my life to finding ways to minimize, the term I like to use is to minimize my statist footprint and to help everyday regular people stuck living in the within the state to find ways to minimize their contribution to what we know to be evil. And that's my deal.
This is Finian Cornelison. I am a agorist and voluntarist, and my objective is to maximize individual liberty as much as possible and destroy the state by 1,000 cuts any way possible.
Anybody else?
I'll go next. I'm Lupinit. I'm one of the very few anarchists left in London, and and I'm basically slowly trying to prove logically voluntarism is the only logical solution.
All right.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep.
Okay, so hi, I'm Nina. I'm a human.
Hi, Nina.
Hey! How are you?
Is this Alcoholics Anonymous?
Well, it works if you work it. It's like, anarchy's like anything else.
I'm an anarchist. I'm Brazilian. I have an amazing mustache that is very real. Yeah, I, like everybody here, I'm very pro free markets. And that's actually my main goal right now, to spread that. That we don't need government for not that.
All right.
Very cool. Thanks.
Who else?
Why am I the only one video casting right now?
Well, you can hit the little camera button and turn it off if you want to, but if you don't want to, that is up to you.
Okay, I'll be the only one. Why are you all afraid to broadcast yourselves and be interpersonal?
Well,
I'm on a mobile on a Wi-Fi connection, my friend. So I'm doing all of you a favor.
Wi-Fi?
Ditto.
My mustache, I cannot really show it live, so.
Okay. I'm kind of at a place I'd be more comfortable without this. Let me figure out what I'm doing. I don't know how you all put your avatar in there. Then I can just kick back. I don't have to put on any face.
Yeah, you turn the camera off, your avatar should automatically show up.
There we go. Then we're actually having a conversation. Let's do that. Thank you, brother. Yeah, you're put on the show. Why not? That makes sense, actually. Okay. So I'd like to see what this looks like on YouTube. I'm working on getting some ideas out there in circles like this about freedom and attaining it in our lifetimes, like within a 2 to 4 year period. As a minarchist, pragmatically. And I'm going to just see what you're all about. I probably be here the whole call. I have tons of stuff to do, but I'm glad to just check in and I'm in all of your personality, learning what you plan to do about it.
Cool.
Well, that's sweet. I'm looking forward. I always like to have a minarchist to kick around. I mean it with love, I promise. But I do also. There's a tone of honesty to that as well.
Sure. Well, likewise, I'm a martial artist and I do a lot of hand play, so your kicks won't touch my guard.
Oh my, we started like that.
Well then. Hey, look at that. The minarchist threatening to initiate violence. Who's surprised? I love you, dude. You're fine, man. You're fine. Besides, martial arts teaches people methods to avoid and deter violence more often than they will ever teach you to initiate. And on the occasion that you do have to use violence, chances are you'll use the minimum amount to maximum effect if you're worth the time and energy you spent. So I'm not concerned, and I'm sure you meant it with all love.
We're all one. I just like it's all verbal judo psychologically. All we're doing here is trying to wake up our own mind, wake up others. So part of the lifestyle, part of something I think it's holistic, along with the same way we look at markets. It's freedom for your body, freedom for yourself. It all boils down to protect yourself against violence. So as a minarchist, you're psychologically working to help the anarchists wake up to pragmatic actions in the real world. That's all.
So, on that level, what about you, Mance?
So, yeah, let's get to know everybody.
I'm unmuting, sorry.
I'm into algorithm and cryptocurrencies right now. I'm looking at one that's going to be the next fucking Bitcoin, next Ethereum. I'm telling you right now, I'm not. If I was, I'd be investing heavy in it right now.
Is it Dash?
I want to know who's out there in the crypto world even care. What's going on?
Yeah. What did you want to hear from me?
Oh, are you all into cryptocurrencies and trading and anything like this?
Yeah. I mean, I have a portfolio, sure, but I mean, I'm more along the school of this is. I want to see the system get taken down. So this isn't like, oh, I'm going to cash out this and that and everything, and I'm going to, if it goes back up to 20,000 and everything, I'm in this for the long haul. I see it as a way to, I see it as a way to circumvent the system. So that's my take on cryptocurrency, and I think some of the loudest voices on cryptocurrency out there, especially on Twitter, are people that might have $200 worth of cryptocurrency. I have way more than that, and and I'm not bragging. I'm just saying I have way more than that. I'm in this for the long haul. And it's one of the reasons why I think some of the loudest people out there on cryptocurrency, especially the ones who want to troll, Bitcoin Cash is Bitcoin Cash is the same as XRP and all this horse shit and everything. And these are people who probably have like 0.001 Bitcoin, and I mean, I just shut up, sit back, try and educate people as much as I can, especially in my personal life.
And blogging, because I'm here. I'm hoping, since this is a YouTube podcast, and you're creating media enough, if you all are doing that, are you writing blogs or doing any educational videos or anything like this to get the word out there?
Well, I don't specifically do. I haven't specifically done any of my own podcasts on cryptocurrency, but I've had a couple people on there to talk about cryptocurrency at length. So yeah, I'm not comfortable. I'm not comfortable talking about it. And I'm not comfortable educating the masses about it. I'm better one-on-one, but I will have people on who I respect and who've been into it a lot longer than I have.
Yeah, and on Steemit, I've gotten a lot of heat for being questioning crypto, I guess you could say. I own crypto, but I don't think people should be like 100% invested in it, and it should just be one hedge of many. And there's a lot of people on Steemit, for example, that, and I'll ask them outright, like, well, how much of your total wealth is invested in crypto? And the people will say, oh, all of it. And I tell them they're nuts. So, I mean, yeah, you can play, get in the market and make some money from it, but anybody that's doing it 100%, I think they're crazy. So yeah, people don't like me for that on Steemit.
I have to admit, though, I agree. You diversify your portfolio for a reason. You can use crypto as a hedge at the moment, but I'd be wary about using it as a full investment
Gold
layer
is
for
great,
people.
But money, no, it's not a question. I mean, the act of proving to the world that our philosophies work is the action of investing in the cryptocurrencies and investing in gold and building not only spread our message, but enterprise. I'm sure. Maybe curious. Do you all, either of you, have other plans that you want to pursue in the free market?
I mean, I have gold and silver, and I have a 401k, and I have cash. I have a certain amount of cash set aside, and most of my 401k is in international markets and gold stocks. So, you have to be able to diversify if you throw everything.
Yeah.
Hi, friend with the video. I'm sorry to cut you guys, but the person with the video is kind of getting really chopped up. I cannot really understand 55% of the things that he's saying. So I think it's the video. So if you prefer,
maybe you can hear me better now. It must be the.
I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. It just keeps like going in and out.
All right. Well, you know what? I honestly wasn't sure. What's the agenda, Jeremy? Would you?
Well, we're talking green anarchy, and it's basically stateless environmentalism. How best to protect the environment, not completely destroy it just because we don't have a state. Because this is a concern that a large amount of people have over whether or not we should adopt anarchy, is that generally people will start to act like children and destroy everything. And I think that one of the key points is to convince people against that. And I think that one of the ways to do that is to discuss generally how to approach the environment as anarchists. And so I invited a bunch of green anarchists to talk in the chat, and it should be a relatively interesting call.
Yeah, that's right. I heard that. My pitch was that there's a cryptocurrency.
We just lost you entirely for quite some time there. It completely blanked out. Do you mind turning off your video?
Yeah, I don't even know how.
Well, you got to hit the little camera icon on the screen.
I've got him in the chat twice as well at the moment.
Here.
And by the way,
Yeah,
that symbol is the letter L and a letter E. It means Liberty Economy. It's an LLC. I'm going to turn it into a legal cooperative. Owners will own a cryptocurrency. A portion of cryptocurrency development goes towards ERC token that's already existent right now. It's called Treecoin. So that's some green anarchy, free market capitalism right there.
I see you connected twice too, and that might be one of the reasons why we're having performance problems.
Did that happen?
It's kind of weird. Like on your phone and your computer, or what?
Oh, you want to know what's weird? I'm getting messed with on all these different levels because probably my message is out into all three of my computers would not work.
It's you, and it's NSA disguised as you.
Exactly.
Which one of you is the real one?
He's a Fed. He's a Fed.
It's only one of them. You know how many objection? If anything seems eerie, you know, you can peace out. You know, if you don't.
Well, anyway,
Something to say.
Let's be honest. The
But I
NSA.
think-
He'd probably
I'm
have better reception.
I'm going full on though, directly with the business plans. Free market. I'm working on an IPO and an ICO, and it's gonna be huge. I got an Ethereum developer, amazing guy. He's living at Terrasante. It's I shouldn't have said that, but it's off the cuff hidden place that's in Arizona. It's actually public. It's public. But people own land. They buy the land for cheap and they build their Earth ships, and they have Wi-Fi, and he's doing everything from there. That's pretty cool. He's telecommuting. You know, this new industry of the future.
all right. Well,
No
my
carbon-
question is how best to reduce the impact on the environment without monopoly on force.
Well, there's no force being used when you're involved in crypto.
Okay, so I guess it was your connection
So
because
that's
that broke up
Pretty
hugely.
cool. You can do that. Right
Yeah,
here.
Nicholas, mate, I think you may need to reconnect.
Oh, yep, something weird's happening. Can you hear me now? No.
I mean, yeah, but it's still choppy. That's the point.
Yeah, you could try reconnecting to the chat, mate. It may improve things a bit.
No, it's not working. I'm gonna turn this off for a second. I'll come back.
Okay.
Anyway,
Well, in answer to your question,
all right, cool.
Jeremy, I was going to say, in answer to your question on methodology, well, basic property rights sort of handles 90% of this, at least, surely. The
Well, I
concept being, maybe I should go into that a bit because everybody here probably gets it, but the people listening to it probably don't understand what I mean. If you care about what you own, then you don't want to see it harmed. If everybody owns something, basically owns a bit of land, then everybody has self-interest in that land not being damaged by other people or even themselves. So when that damage does occur, there would be routes to deal with it under property rights, because it'd be an act of aggression to pollute somebody else's land.
Sure.
Now, with the state, you've got things like the EPA, who actively have polluted other people's land because it's public. And they basically said, well, we had to do something, so we just contaminated this water supply. Or we didn't do anything for Flint. Or you name it, there's something that you can basically pin on one of those three-letter swear word agencies.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, or that
It's-
corporation lobbies the government for billions of dollars a year, and we just happen to ignore the pollution they're doing.
no, precisely. Or say it's within acceptable limitations, which is my own personal favorite way for saying this. It's not going to kill anybody, therefore it's okay. Might make you terminally sick for 100 years, but that's beside the
Yeah.
point.
Only 1,000 people in the zip code died from cancer, so that's okay.
Statistical aberrations aside, there's other problems that we're going to hit with the arguments, because people will default to things like global warming and mass pollution and mass deforestation as things that are going to be major concerns. So those are the ones that
You
we
make a-
actually have to come up with actual strategies to tackle.
Exactly. And you made a really good point in a reference to people are going to make an appeal to authority. That's something we're very accustomed to, and we have to counter those. One example I would give, okay, so everyone says, like what you said about the fact that the condition that Flint is in, that's completely on the lap of the government, because that's a utility that only the government or government licensed third parties are allowed to handle. In the exact same thing with the EPA disaster that happened, and I believe it was the Colorado River that you mentioned, where you had a private mining company telling you, you should not do this. This is a bad idea. If you make a mistake, the backflow on this is going to cause it to rupture into an underwater line that feeds directly into the river, and it's going to contaminate it. And that's exactly what happened, because private sector told public sector, and public sector. People give appeal to authority that, well, if we don't have a government and EPA to make us do these things, then people will just do whatever they want. There's two arguments to that. Number one is, well, sure, you gave the EPA the power to protect the environment, so now the state has exclusive right over what's acceptable and what's not. So what happens when someone like Trump gets in office and sets Rex Tillerson as the head of the EPA or some other such example? So now your appeal to authority immediately can do all the harm that you were trying to avoid, because it is corruptible. But the other point is, people say the same thing about nuclear devices. Well, what? You just want everybody to have nukes? We need our government. Well, your governments are the ones that created nukes and used them on people and killed thousands of people with them. So I'm not sure you'd want to appeal to the same people. It'd be like appealing to meth dealers to manage and keep meth safe. You see what I'm saying? So first you show them the fallacy of their argument, how silly that is. You're appealing to the same criminals. It's like asking Saudi Arabia to be the head of Human Rights Council. It just doesn't make sense. Two is, just like anything else, the way to tackle that is by policies, which that's in every, anti-state showing this, and government and every. And number two is the same model we've used for everything else. The same reason that cryptocurrency is so popular now, the same reason that so many things like unschooling and permaculturing becomes popular. You show people are not satisfied with the model, so you create a different model. Stop me if you've heard this one before, anarchists and agorists, but you create it and you show it to the people, and people will naturally choose that better model because it's better for them. If you do this, that creates a permanent, long-lasting effect. And yes, you will still have people who dump on their property. And yes, you will still have the occasional person who will, what's that one they like to use all the time? Poison the well for everyone. This is on the rare occasion going to happen. But just the fact that it violates the social norm and that all of your neighbors are going to consistently hate you and ostracize you is going to greatly reduce this effect from the social conscious awareness thing. Similar here in Portland. No one forces us to do these things. It's the culture. It's what the kids want to do, so they do it. And everyone doesn't do it. But those who don't, they get looked at funny. No one wants to hang out with you. No one wants your business. So that's my take on it. Start simple and then use that exact same simple formula as the story gets more complex. But keep it as simple as possible.
Well, sounds good. Anybody got a response?
I'm in total agreement.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, and then you come up with people who say that, well, that person didn't support the environment, and most people don't because they're so bent on like their convenience that they're not really interested in positive change. So, I mean, adoption on a mass scale, getting anarchy is going to be a global like effort. If you look at it, the way like in what I would consider a rational way, and how can that global effort get the sort of world mobilized for this sort of thing? How can that happen? That's the real question, because Portland is a very like nice city for people who like Portland, but realistically, you know, it's not representative of the majority of the globe. So how do you get people on board? How do you get people on board on a mass scale so that they stop, you know, supporting the things that destroy the world and start supporting the things that don't without a government oversight?
Well, I need to remember who the hell this scientist's name was, but basically there was this guy. He's an inventor. He's come up with some way to actually get rid of the Great Pacific Gyre plastic island and make a profit. Now, then there's also things like Sky Ocean Rescue Charity, which has put a lot of attention on that particular environmental disaster, because it is an environmental disaster, that one. That one is perhaps one of the worst things that is plaguing this planet is the sheer volume of plastics floating about in the Pacific. That is devastating to the ecosystem and also to our food supply.
Well, sure.
So even for our own preservation, it's
how
important.
these things start? Because I mean, these things start for a reason, and like generally speaking, is a Great Pacific Garbage Patch cleaner going to help dramatically if it's only going to be thrown in a landfill so that production can be started again?
I don't think that's how it works. I think it would basically be recycled material.
Well, and it'd be interesting to look into that, because what I saw is like you're talking about this skimmer that goes around, right?
That's on a really good point, Jeremiah.
Well, this is the thing. I need to research this guy's work myself, if I'm honest, to actually speak on it a bit more. I was going to focus on one of the other things that we need to tackle, which is global warming.
Okay, well,
yes.
Well, let DB's fucking Conan wanted to say something. So, I mean, what do you have to say, like, in response to that? I mean, because realistically, I think that the production, the fact that the production creates waste, is what's the primary pollutant.
Sure. Now, of course, we need to find something productive to do with these plastics, but the real solution is to stop continuing to produce the plastics. And of course, that's not just going to stop overnight. Plastic is popular for a reason. It's really useful. It's cheap to make, and it's very effective. But as you guys probably know, because it's in like page 5 of the anti-state handbook, hemp was banned primarily because people were concerned that it would replace petroleum-based products like plastics. You can make for approximately the same amount of money as plastics, you can make a long-lasting, durable hemp plastic base that is biodegradable. About 40 years to degrade. But cigarette film. The point is, it doesn't float around in the ocean and pollute fish for 100 years. If we're using a hemp-based plastic, that's something you can put in a landfill, and that's something that will naturally break down without the same problems and complications that you get from petroleum-based plastics. An example of vegetable-based plastics are the cellophane. That's a good example too. So switching that direction, and hemp makes it an affordable option.
Yeah, hemp's a good solution, but yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why it is not really legal, as well as the sheer volume of money that could be made off of this material by pretty much anybody who takes the time to research how to do it, and it doesn't take a lot of research, is astonishing. And unfortunately, because it's legal, nobody can use it. This is one of the major problems. If we had those choices, if we had that responsibility for ourselves, we'd actually be able to use those things for improvements.
Right. I'm so sorry for speaking over you. Yeah, you're right. That's another example that you can use as to the state's inefficiency in managing the environment is, before we had, you got to remember, we had a good 30, 40 years of industrial revolution before there was even a blip on the environmental radar. And the reason this happened is because, like you said, it's because the state allowed these laws and regulations to be passed that encourage things like deforestation. You guys already know this, so I'm talking to the YouTube that are listening, but you can get the amount of, for example, the amount of pulp paper or school paper or what have you out of 1 acre of hemp is the equivalent to 4 acres of forest. And an acre of hemp you can grow 2, in some areas, 3 crops of hemp in one season. It takes almost 10 years to get a pine forest to grow enough to where you can harvest again. So 4 times the amount, and we're talking 30 times the amount of time to regrow. That combined with what we already mentioned about it being biodegradable, it just goes to show that, like, even the hemp seed oil that would replace petroleum motor oil. That was the big kicker when this all started. That was the thing that really wanted people to shut down hemp legislation. But yes, this is something we need to point out to people, that these guys have not acted in the best interest of us as a whole, of us as individuals, or the planet that we live in. When you have that information in front of them, It makes people, it sobers people, and it makes them more willing to listen to these possible ideas we have of a decentralized effort through influence and persuasion rather than coercion.
Two other points on hemp. If I'm not mistaken, Ford was working on a hemp car back when he was still alive. They had a hemp car. That was right. And the other one, so it could compete with steel, basically, is what we're saying as well. The other one, and this is my personal favorite and quite new discovery, I believe they can make hemp into graphene. So you can organically grow graphene now, effectively, using hemp fiber. And that is, I mean, that is a game changer. That material itself is insane.
A game changer. Yep, game changer, no doubt. That's huge.
I need to dig out the article.
We know the government's not concerned about efficiency either. This isn't about the government being inefficient. It's about corporatism or fascism or whatever you want to call it. And these corporations control the government basically, and that's why we get these inefficient, polluting products, because the better ones aren't allowed to compete.
And the reason
it's not just hemp either. It's marijuana.
Well, because here's the thing about hemp, like on an environmental level, it produces I believe combustible oil. It produces an oil that could be used as a biofuel. It produces enough of this over a yield to fuel cars with fields of marijuana or hemp, and that is insanely harmful to big oil. It's insanely harmful to the big oil that basically maintains the value of the dollar. The only time when hemp will be legal on a wide scale, because it can't get people high. There are no arguments related to that. The only time it'll be illegal on that scale is either when the state is abolished or when they find another thing to back the dollar with, which might be lithium or something else. But that's the reason that so many interests are overseas in the Middle East and why they keep regional footholds there, because they can promise countries that control our debt to, pay them in presence and support for their oil refineries and their drill sites. So, and oil is hugely environmentally impactful. It has a really poor impact on the environment and isn't really interested in efficiency. And you can produce that with hemp. So I would say that that's probably one of the primary reasons that they don't want it, because it would remove the stated reasons for their regional footholds, and the entire war on terror would collapse. It's a really big moneymaker for people who have really big established money.
Agreed. Go ahead, boss. You got it.
Cheers, mate. Jeremiah, just shared with you a link from the BBC, no less, singing the praises of hemp-produced graphene. Apparently, it's even better than the other stuff that they've been producing inorganically. So, yeah, that's a huge step forward for it, I think. And if it can be used in that medium, at least, then that'd be a good reason to get it re-legalized, and then it can be used for everything else.
So what I was going to say is that I think the most important thing when we say people, because the goal today is green anarchism, how we can explain and convince people and instill confidence that green anarchism can work. What we're doing is we're trying to encourage people to explore the idea that people will freely do what is best for everyone of their own volition. And that is very hard to do because people are conditioned that if they don't have a chain around their neck, they will just wander and do crazy things, because that's what we've been taught for the last 4 generations. And I'm convinced that the first step in getting anyone to even try to grasp that concept, as alien as it's going to be to their mind, the only way to do it is to destroy this false foundation that they have in their mind by, again, I know I'm repeating myself a little bit here, but by pointing out all of these horrible decisions that have been made by the state. Not only, like you said, it's not about the state being inefficient. It's about the state being willfully harmful and negatively impactful to the environment that we all live in for their own interest. The sooner we point this out to people, the more receptive and open they will be to voluntary, non-coercive methods.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree. Myself, I don't really know a lot about that, about environmentalism, because I feel like everything I've learned until before becoming an anarchist was state taught, quote unquote. So I need to relearn. Like, environment is not what I've learned, and the things that they tell you in school is to turn you into another like a soldier and their little all rainbow, all happy army of people who will defend, the forest, and that's
It's a cult, Nina. It's a cult.
Exactly, and it's so annoying how it's not how it works, and how people really truly believe that the government really wants to defend the planet from global warming. It annoys the hell out of me. However, I myself don't know too much about it. I didn't know anything of those hemp things that you guys were talking about. And I know that the government is shit, but I myself don't know a lot of alternatives. And the alternatives I know are very expensive. And that makes things difficult for, people to get interested in looking for.
Can I ask what alternatives are particularly expensive?
For example, let me see. For example, cars. There are fuel, I don't know, electricity or water or whatever. At least where I am at, it is very expensive to look for an alternative to, oil, based things. That's what I'm trying to say.
You're right. And it's true that these are expensive because they're still in their concept stage, though granted, they shouldn't have been. As we've mentioned, there have been several potentially cost-effective alternative methods that were squashed over the years. But let me ask you this. Would you be surprised if I told you could effectively run your car on combustion that would be about 1/10 of the emissions that you have now?
No.
It would not be electrical, and it would cost you the equivalent to about 75 cents per gallon. That would probably surprise you if I told you could do that now. Step two, you can do that to a 1982 Dodge truck that's going to cost you about $1,500, and then you spend about another $500 in modifications to do it. And step three is that this method of powering your vehicles has been around. They were using it in Europe up until World War I. That term is called gasification. My British friend may have some familiarity with it, but in America, it's practically unknown. It's cheap, it's extremely effective, and you can literally extract natural gas from garbage, cut woods, scrap construction material, basically anything that burns. So yeah, that exists. It has existed for an extremely long time. It's remarkably cheap. In fact, these countries, I'm not sure which one it is, it may be Switzerland, actually uses gas to reduce their landfills and to help power their cities. But this can be used in cars, automobiles, and it's safer than gasoline and much, much cheaper.
No, I would not be surprised, because I've seen it with my own eyes, people trying to find out different ways to make their cars go, and effectively doing it, and not being allowed to run it. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know why it's not easier for me to have access to that type of information and for other people. Maybe this is why they still think that the government will help, because at the same time that the government is saying, let's save the world from the global warming, it's still pumping us up with oil, and it's kind of crazy, but people just accept it because that's what we were taught. So I think education is part of it, the main part of it. And especially for me, I need to educate myself. So I thank you for telling me those things. I'm totally going to research it. And I'll definitely try to post more and more of those links on the internet.
Oh, you don't have to research it. I'll send you all the links.
Because I want to read more about it. It's so interesting. It's where I'm from, like in Brazil. environment is everything because of Amazonia, or the forest that is the lungs of the world, and we need to protect it because it is ours, quote unquote. It's Brazilians. It's not, definitely not. I hate when people say that. Yeah, the Amazon is ours. No, it's not. Like, absolutely not. If it belongs, I don't even know to who it belongs. It should belong to the Brazilian government, but it's just cold. It's just disappearing more and more every year.
No. It should not belong to the Brazilian government. Thank you very much.
Wait, you know what I meant.
No, I know it should belong to the people.
It shouldn't belong to no one.
The thing is, this is the thing. Actually, some people do. In fact, technically, I own a piece of land for rainforest land. Supposedly, spent quite a bit of time doing a lot of charity work when I was really, really young and not realizing what I was doing. But there was a big incentive in private schools to basically try to help save the rainforest. So people bought up plots of land, acres worth. There's an acreage under a particular class from one of the schools I went to that's currently protected land. That works, technically, because then the charity owns the land, and they will make sure that that land is protected and kept as a rainforest so the biodiversity stays there. Now, whether or not that agreement is actually paid any attention to by the Brazilian government, I have no idea. I have no idea how the state of my land is. But I still consider that to be mine. And if I find out they've plowed down all the trees and turned it into a farm, I'd be pissed.
Oh, wow.
Well, the government's more likely to sell that land to a large corporation so that they can clear cut it and profit from it too. Because it's not just oil. It's uranium. It's all the utility companies like the electric company and all these bills that we're paying when we shouldn't have to pay them. If government was not there facilitating these large corporations to do the damage that they do, it wouldn't happen. At least not on the scale that it's happening now. It would not happen.
Luke, you took on a fantastic point. If you and privileged to have attended your private school could get together and buy up plots of land for the sole sake of protecting it and preserving it, then what in the world is to stop like-minded individuals like ourselves and those who would be listening to this on YouTube to do the same thing? Form a voluntary collective, pool our money together, buy a large resource and say, this land is dedicated to conservation. It is exclusively accessible to the indigenous peoples who live there. Anyone else who trespasses will be shot on sight. Like, what is to stop us from doing that? I see no reason why not. That's a very strong argument for conservation.
Strictly speaking,
and
as
it
well,
gives me an excuse to threaten to shoot people on sight. So you guys know me.
That's actually a very good argument, and strictly speaking, and I know that I am going to cringe for this so much, but I'm actually going to sing the praises of some royals. Because the Queen recently set up a trust of her own, basically, to do just that. Now, she is a powerful individual with a lot of money, but she's really a figurehead, if we're honest. And she will be able to keep quite a large swath of land from being changed from forest. So, and that's across multiple countries at the moment. All the old Commonwealth countries are jumping on board with this initiative, probably because David Attenborough is behind it as well. So there's quite a widespread amount of British people who are trying to basically save forests all over the world by making them protected Commonwealth forests so that the governments there have to protect them.
You sure it's not like the Bush family where they're buying up large lots of land in Paraguay and stuff for their own benefit for the future?
Possibly, but it seems like they're putting a lot of effort into just the conservation side. They've been very publicly facing on that front.
To distract people from the property they're buying in Paraguay.
Possibly, very possibly, very possibly. I mean, but this is the thing. I mean, if we're talking like land buy and sell, you've got on the one side the Bushes and on the other side the Rothschilds who are selling land left, right, and center. So it's a bit difficult to judge what is going on with regards to what people are trying to do with what land and where. Which is why I try to avoid that particular discussion. Land is land. If you own it, you own it, and whatever you do with it is your purpose. But if your purpose is set as this is now protected land for the environment, then you've got something that can persist over time, as long as that contract stands, obviously.
It gets into some of the more complicated issues, though, where like indigenous people, technically, they were there first. Like Panama is a good example of this. There is an indigenous tribe to Panama, and a lot of their land is protected for their use. Like they're allowed to stay there, it's theirs. And of course, you've got the opposite of that, like the United States, where basically the major mass of it was confiscated and they were pushed off of it.
Yeah, well, this is where sins of the father argument comes into play. How far do you go back for reparations? How far do you blame your ancestors for your faults in this world? Basically, it's
and
one that I don't really tend to.
We need to be able to have private property too. Like I've run into a lot of people lately that call themselves so-called anarchists, but they're completely against owning land. I'm like, that's impossible. Those two are not consistent. They just don't work together.
I was debating some anarcho-socialists recently, which really threw me. Because they said there is no government, there is no state, but there is a socialist government.
Okay.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I debated a banana octopus the other day. It went about the same.
Well,
that's what I hear when you say anarcho-socialist. I hear like orange cantaloupe. Like it just.
Yeah, I don't understand how it would work, because they're trying to tell me basically that I'm not allowed to own land. I can have personal belongings and stuff, but when I own land, that's unethical. And I'm like, okay, so I'm going to spend 10 years building a farm, growing trees, and developing a property, and then you're telling me anybody can just come in and take it from me because it's unethical for me to have that. It just doesn't work.
And then they'll say no, but then they can't explain why. But going a bit off track here.
Yeah, but everybody that's here, exactly. Everyone here knows this. Let's focus on it.
You're breaking up, DB.
Wow.
Yeah, DB,
like
It is.
I'm trying to get Nicholas back in here too, by the way, because Nicholas cut out a while back as well.
Effective method. One thing I want
It's dead, man. DB is dead. You might need to reconnect.
Conan.
Yeah, DB, Conan.
There, I'm gonna just mute that because
Like her auto tuning or something.
Yeah.
Like we're talking.
And to be clear, I'm not doing that, right? It's only him right now.
Yeah, it's only him.
All right,
It's only him at the moment.
And I'm trying to get Nicholas back in here as well, because like I didn't want to fucking kick him.
Yeah, I think he just left. I mean, somebody said that this is like it's on a tangent or something, but I think it's related to it.
Welcome back, Nicholas.
It's related to it because why shouldn't I be able to own a large plot of land as long as I'm taking good care of it and I'm not polluting it and I'm producing and developing it for food and the good of other people, basically, not just myself.
Well, their argument will be, well, it's not yours, it's everyone's, so move aside. Doesn't matter if you've done this stuff. Thank you for doing it. We appreciate that. But now we're going to do things to it. And our stuff is magically going to be better than yours because reasons.
Yeah, and that's like the argument where if you give a bunch of people that don't understand economics some money, then very shortly after they will be broke again. Like people the other day, they gave me a hard time because I invest in like peer-to-peer lending. And I was trying to explain to them, it's like, well, if you cancel everybody's debt right now, a year from now, the majority of the people are going to be in debt again. So you can't stop people from making bad decisions. And it's the same way with land and environmental issues. Like there's got to be a system in place that prevents those type of people from making the bad decisions. And the best way to do that is private property. People that own it and have a vested interest in protecting it.
Yep. My thoughts exactly, mate. There's one thing I'm not going to have too much time today because I'll be honest, I've had a lot of back pain the past couple of days, so I'm going to be cutting off a little bit earlier than I usually do. But I do want to circle around to one of the things that I mentioned, which were, and also Nina mentioned, global warming. Because I'm not saying that there's no such thing as climate change. I don't want anybody to be thinking that I'm some sort of science denialist, but I do want people to actually start looking at how they came up with the numbers. I do want people to actually start looking at the science critically, because I started having a look. I basically started subscribing to Principia Scientifica just to see what their arguments were, because I've talked to loads of climate scientists. I've worked with a few of them, and they've all said, no, this is just pure bullshit. It's obviously real. I'm like, okay, fine. Let me start researching the original data sets. And one of the things I found is a fundamental flaw in the mathematics of calculating out the temperature that the Earth should be based on the science. And they actually have this on Wiki. Okay, they describe the calculation on Wiki and how it's done. And it says within the description that they treat the planet as a disk. Okay, so it's flat and the sun is shown on it, and then they extrapolate from that a sphere.
I knew it.
To work out the actual dimensions of like how much area the sun's going to hit, and then calculate what energy is going into the planet from the sun. Now, this is then taken with another calculation. You work out the two you basically equal the two calculations together and then work out the temperature. And it's a little convoluted, but the problem is basic geometry. They've taken a three-dimensional object, turned it into a two-dimensional object, and then extrapolated it back into 3D. And that doesn't work. If you look at the orientation of the sun to how it would hit the Earth, it wouldn't hit it as a disk unless it was a flat Earth. So basically, anybody saying that the calculation as it stands today is correct is a flat earther, first and foremost, okay? I'm sorry, but you are. If you're listening, you need to actually review the calculation, because it's not hitting a circle face on, it's hitting a circle at its edge. And an edge is 1 over pi, not 1 over 4. And that's the difference that we're talking about here. It's not huge. It's like it's 6%. It's a 6% discrepancy. That's it in the constants. And that discrepancy alone accounts for 50% of the amount of warming that we're experiencing, apparently. Because it increases the expected temperature by something like 15 or 17 degrees. It's now 15 degrees. So instead of being 255, it's 270. And because that expected temperature is higher, you reduce the amount of unexpected warming that is actually occurring. And that's the important bit that people don't know. And if they get that fundamental math wrong, that fundamental geometry, why should we trust the rest of this?
Well, but that's not really like that's part of the point. Sure, part of the point is that a whole lot of what the state has to say about climate change and environmentalism in general is suspicious, but that's sort of it's not really the point of green anarchy, because what the point of green anarchy is to try and get stateless solutions to protecting the environment from something similar to that. The real thing that would be interesting would be to discuss that these climate trends are something that's present throughout pretty much the whole history, like all of it. And realistically speaking, the world goes through heating and cooling trends relatively regularly, and there have been huge warming and cooling periods, and I get the argument. People are putting holes in the ozone, and in doing so, there's going to be some sort of catastrophic thing that we can't stop. But I would argue that humans, before that happens, would already have gotten the planet's natural defenses up, because it's in a Goldilocks zone. And once sea levels rise and people in Miami are learning to swim, like realistically speaking, there's going to be a lot of changes that are going to take place. And I don't see why those changes wouldn't include getting away from the institution that pollutes the most, which is the government. That's the real thing. The government is the single largest polluter on the planet, and they regularly dump their fucking toxic bullshit everywhere. So them telling us, like looking down from their ivory towers, that we have to, curb our pollution, curb our potential so that we can not be, violent to the planet, is fucking dumb, and it's also like tyrannical. Only for us do we get to do these things. Yeah, fuck you, and fuck your government.
I think it's important simply because it highlights just yet one of the other ways everybody is basically being lied to. And this is the key thing. One of the major problems is, as Conan highlighted earlier, appeal to authority. The number one authority, even above government, is science. Science sees us through. It's been proven, it's been shown. Everybody loves science. We've even got TV series dedicated just to showing science and having fun with scientists and everything else. We are obsessed. And yet we politicize the damn thing. We've got to stop doing that. The minute we stop doing that, we can actually get forward.
And getting government out of science will do a good deal for that, because government funding in science means that you can just like force your partisan ideology into something that should be objective.
Exactly. And that's one of my major points is science has been corrupted by the state. We need to get it out as fast as possible. And I know that there's going to be a lot of screaming socialists at the moment, but I'm sorry. Your politicized science has created people who think that the earth is flat. And they use climate change as a reason to say the earth is flat. So we need to adjust people's thinking here and actually react to the reality, not say blindly all of these respected physicists are science deniers. And when we can do that, I think people will start looking at climate a lot more critically, and they'll actually start looking for solutions to things that they see as being problems. For me, carbon is not a problem. Carbon is a good thing. It helps plants grow.
Carbon might be a problem for humanity, but humanity, if it's going to be irresponsible in this way, needs to fucking die out. That's one of.
I argue it's not even a problem for humanity, because in areas of high carbon dioxide, you get high plant growth. It is a basic fact of science, because there's a lot of food, the plants eat more. It's as simple as that.
Oh, and by the way, Conan. You are no longer muted. So, I mean, if you do want to say something, feel free to.
Taxation.
Gotcha. Well, you're talking up again. Is there any way
just
you
muted him again?
What? I didn't mute him.
It just said you muted him again.
Okay, well, either way, like, just try to get closer to your router, because I think that might help. You were saying something, though, Finian?
I forget what I was saying. Sorry.
My apologies, because I sort of rolled you over there.
Nina, did you want to say something?
No, I was going to say he was trying to speak Portuguese. That's why he forgot.
Yeah. I'm trying to learn Spanish, not Portuguese, but I know you're in Brazil, so you guys don't speak Spanish. I think your English is spectacular. Like I said in chat, I wish my Spanish was as good as your English.
Thanks. I feel like I have way too many ideas going on in my brain, and then I try to translate them from Portuguese to English live, and I can't, and it sounds all very confusing, but thank you all for understanding.
Oh, that's fine. It's fine. You're doing fine.
You know, one of the things and I know from people that I know that work for the government that the government is actually planning for an event similar to the Carrington event in 1859. And it's somewhat related to the environment because our star is the number one, you know, the main influence on our environment, basically. And right now, they're very concerned that we're in a cycle, of course, that repeats, and the sun's going into a minimum. So the whole warming thing, to me, I'd be more concerned about a cooling event than a warming event. And a cooling event is way more dramatic on the human life than a warming event. And it's more likely at this point, too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anybody, well, I doubt it because you're not in London, but a few months back, we had a bit of a blizzard here. It was unexpected, and it was traced to Russia. But the reason why, the Russians did it. The reason why it happened, though, is weird. There was a dramatic cold spike for a few moments in the Arctic Circle around Russia, where the temperature dropped something like 50 degrees in minutes and then leveled out. That drop in temperature then triggered this massive burst of weather to hit most of Britain and did actually give us quite a bit of snow for once, which I was pleased to see. But that on its own, those sorts of events make me pause and think, this doesn't look like something that should happen if the Earth is getting warmer. If the sun is producing less energy, it would make sense for some spikes like this to occur, especially in places like the Arctic during February.
Right, and based off the magnetic poles and the magnetic shield that's around our planet, which has shifted over, you know, the years, basically. The Arctic didn't used to look the way it did now, and Africa didn't look the way it did now, and it's not something exactly we can plan for, but it's something that's forever changing, and we have absolutely no control over it, and they know from, like, fossil tables and looking at the Earth's crust that things like that can change and easily within a matter of one generation, if not 1 to 3 years. So it's a serious a serious environmental concern, and it's not something a lot of people are considering right now.
Look at Africa. I mean, at the moment, with the Great Rift is basically expanded almost catastrophically in some places.
Well, let me just, because I think people don't get that these ideas sort of transcend time. And I want to read something from the Wikipedia about green anarchism. And I'll be reading a few of these entries, and it's all fucking CCO, so I won't have to worry about anybody copyright striking me because I'm saying words that they don't want me to say, unless I'm paying them money. Which is always fucking dumb. You can get copyright struck for reading something live. Whatever. Fucking dumbasses. We could probably just do an entire episode on IP at some point. But either way, Henry David Thoreau. Anarchism started to have an ecological view, mainly in the writings of American anarchist and transcendentalist Henry David Thoreau. In his book Walden, he advocates simple living and self-sufficiency among natural surroundings in resistance to the advancement of industrial civilization. The work is part of personal declaration of independence, social experiment, voyage of spiritual discovery, satire, and manual for self-reliance. First published in 1854, it details Thoreau's experiences over the course of 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days in a cabin he built near Walden Pond amidst woodland owned by his friend and mentor Ralph Waldo Emerson near Concord, Massachusetts. The book compresses the time into a single calendar year and uses passages of 4 seasons to symbolize human development. By immersing himself in nature, Thoreau hoped to gain a more objective understanding of society through personal introspection. Simple living and self-sufficiency were Thoreau's other goals, and the whole project was inspired by transcendentalist philosophy, a central theme of the American Romantic period. As Thoreau made clear in his book, his cabin was not in the wilderness, but at the edge of a town about 2 miles from his family home. As such, many have seen in Thoreau one of the precursors of ecologism and anarcho-primitivism represented today in Jean Certain. For George Woodcock, this attitude can also be motivated by certain ideas of resistance to progress and of rejection of the growing materialism, which is the nature of American society in the mid-19th century. John Certain himself included the text Excursions by Thoreau in his edited compilation of writings called Against Civilization, Reading and Reflections from 1999. So let's start talking a little bit about simple living and self-sufficiency. I mean, because that's one of the primary things. People want their, quote, own house, and they don't often think about sharing one. People want, quote, their own car. People want, a way to get cheap, easy food, so they go to McDonald's. People want cheap, easy groceries, so they go to Walmart. How do we get people to, cut themselves off from what is ultimately a very toxic thing to the environment and the world, and also what supports the state? Because, like-minded parasites think alike, and corporate and government relationships are fairly thoroughly intertwined. How do we get people on that track?
I'm not certain that's the best track to try.
Well,
we're still having trouble hearing you. One moment. Again, I'll have to do it again.
People.
What's the name of that rapper that does the auto-tune in every song? It's like he's here with us.
Yeah. Conan, have you actually tried to reconnect? I don't think I've seen you leave and come back. Just please try to reconnect, because it might actually fix it. Yeah, you're still broken.
I'm hoping it will.
Nicholas's PC went down. Nicholas Guillermo, which, by the way, everybody should check him out. His thing is Rypack. I did a video with him last week. He's got some good ideas, but he his entire system went down, so that's the reason he isn't coming back in.
Fair enough. Somebody attack his power lines.
You guys have heard of the Lieberland project, right?
Oh yeah.
I've
heard
is that
of
how
that.
that's pronounced?
Lieberland, yeah. Isn't it in like Finland or that sort of region, Scandinavia sort of region?
It's Eastern Europe. It's between Serbia and Croatia, and it's basically a failed project at this point, because I think Croatia is barring people from entering the area. So if you try to enter or you do enter, they arrest you and throw you in prison. But his concept, yeah, his concept is a good idea, though, in that people like us should be able to go somewhere. I mean, this is like within the current system. Like, you could use the system against itself. We get enough people together, like the Free State Project, but on steroids, and we all buy an area of land together, and by doing that, all of us as private property owners of a similar area in the same area as each other, we have a vested interest in protecting the environment in that area. And I think things like that would allow people that are out for individual liberty and also at the same time interested in protecting the environment and coexisting with nature and not destroying it would have a better way than the current system where the government controls everything.
Well, and where the government is really fucking shit at coexisting with the environment because they're not goddamn interested in it. I really emphasize that point so much.
Yeah, that is
Yeah,
very
they don't
true.
care. Well, the government basically is going to do everything that makes their largest lobbyists the most money. I mean, that's what we have now, and unfortunately, that's the way the system's set up.
I've got some. Nina, can you speak on what Brazil's been doing with its dams recently? Because I think that may help push the argument a little bit.
What are dams?
As in the hydroelectric plants that they've been trying to build and I think were failing, if I'm not mistaken, for funding purposes. And we're
Okay.
trying to
Well,
take
we
down
do-
half of the Amazon rainforest in the process.
Yeah. Okay, so the guy who went to jail now, Lula, right? He had a bunch of projects. One of them he released he delivered in the Northeast, literally like 11 years after he started it, and he promised it in like 2 years. So he literally just like delivered it, and it's garbage. It doesn't work. It's terrible. That's in the Northeast. São Paulo, which is my place, which is southeast, is we have how can I say that? We have like a lot of water. It's a very hydraulic. It's very able to. We don't need to be like lacking water the way that we are right now. But because they suck and the government sucks so much, we are almost like Cape. What's the name of that town in Africa who's like running out of water?
Johannesburg.
Yeah, we're almost there. We're almost there.
Seriously? It's
Because
gotten that
they are,
bad?
yes. It's that dry, like because of them. And we don't understand why, because it rains. We are not going through a drought or anything. There are times that we have to go like months with a limit of how much you can spend or how much water and electricity you can use. And if you pass that, you pay like a huge fine. It's pretty terrible, actually. And I think I've got so used to it right now, lately, that I don't even, it's not that weird anymore, you know what I'm saying, to ration water down there, down in Brazil.
Hey guys, microphone check. How do I sound now?
Oh,
Much better.
1,000 times better.
All right, well, let me just make this moment to say, leave it to a socialist government to have a drought in the middle of the fucking rainforest, right? Just
exactly. Exactly.
Since I'm back. Yeah.
You took the words
but,
right out of my mouth.
I know. I mean,
But yeah, it's pretty much like that, guys. It's terrible. So I'll pass the mic. But the dance, I don't really know much more than this about them. All I know is that it's not. It's just a plan. They're never going to deliver it.
Yeah, they had a plan for a hydroelectric dam, as I understand it, in Brazil. I think it is in Sao Paulo. I'm not certain. I've got to research. I've got to look it up again because this was a few years ago. I looked at this. He had a female president at the time, and it was before this whole corruption scandal broke out, I think, as well. But yeah, the Brazilian government basically sold a bunch of land that was mostly Amazon rainforest, if I'm not mistaken, to build a hydroelectric dam that was supposed to be this huge green energy project that was going to destroy huge amounts of rainforest in the process and also move some primitive tribes out of their land.
That sounds exactly what happened to Panama.
Yeah, very similar situation. And it seems like this is almost a trend amongst the socialist states in South America. Because, I hesitate to point to Venezuela because that's rapidly turning into Godwin's law at this rate. Because because it's like the instant disproof to any socialist state. But Brazil is rapidly approaching that point as well, if it's not careful. The good thing is that there's a lot of agorism, I think, in Brazil as well, from what I've seen.
Yes.
Quite a lot. And that's the
lot.
only reason why it's actually still developed and not just or in the developing status and not actually in the poverty status.
I think that's what keeps us going. The agorism that we have, it's part of our culture, actually. It's not like we're anarchists or anything. We hate the state and we don't listen to it. And even if we did listen to it, the state could never, it doesn't work. And it's so big and it can never ever stop us from doing what we want to. So yeah, it's the only thing keeping us from going Venezuela.
Oh, and speaking of statelessness, I have a left anarchist that's interested in coming on the show, so he'll probably be here shortly, and I've known him for a while. He's good people, so it'll be interesting to get a mix of perspectives here.
Shortly, like today?
Yeah, in a couple minutes. He said he wanted to jump in, and I sent him the link, so I just thought I'd let people know.
Well, that's a great idea. I can't wait to talk to him about my bio-friendly chopper fuel that I've been working on.
Oh my god!
Before we change subjects,
wait, that's quite a
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
If things were set up the way we would all like them to be, and land was not owned by governments and there was no corporatism, would dams as we know it today even exist? Because the whole concept to me pisses me off, because it's a centralized money-making system for large corporations, and really,
dude, it's worse than that. It's just a jobs number thing.
I'll be honest, I don't think there'd even be an issue with regards to anybody wanting hydropower, or it'd be based on where you live. But because thorium is such a common element in the earth, and any mine can produce thorium in quite high quantities, that material alone could revolutionize how we look at energy today. And it would render Thoreau's Walden moot, because energy is what drives society. It is that power source that defines what we can and cannot do. And the power source itself, that lifter, and I don't know if anybody researched it from when I mentioned it before, but the liquid fluoride thorium reactor lifter is something everybody should look into. It is nuclear power that is safe, efficient, and would revolutionize everything. It can be put into planes, cars, trains, any device, and it is pretty much perfectly safe because it's designed that if it starts to overheat, it turns itself off.
But you said nuclear.
Yeah. Well,
I love Fallout 4 fan fiction personally.
The current system.
It's important.
Did someone say fan fiction?
It is a nuclear material. It is a nuclear reactor, but it is
still saying nuclear though. It's nuclear. That's the joke I was
making. Nuclear. Oh, sorry. Nuclear.
Nuclear.
Oh God, no.
It's back, Conan. My argument.
Conan has come back.
Nuclear power plants, I'd be all for them if they didn't have nuclear waste that
they
never
won't.
goes away.
With thorium, it is pretty much an infinite reaction. It is a weird way of working. This is the thing. The way that it
I'm all
functions,
for those, but the
everything
old ones are a disaster.
Yeah, I agree. The uranium ones are inefficient. They're very poorly designed. They tend to eventually fail, and when they fail spectacularly. And when you build a uranium reactor on a fault line and have tsunami hit it, you create huge problems for the entire world. Conan, you need to reconnect again, mate. I'm sorry.
Let's all pick on the Brit, right?
Someone remix that, please.
I know, it sounds like a trance, like dance music mix.
We need to get that guy who does the ones for Jordan B. Peterson on this, just so that he can remix Conan's mic failing.
Yeah, I'm all for the thorium plants. But right now we have even in the US, we have a serious problem because we have all of these failing old model GE electric ones and there is no solution for them. Like if the entire world right now shut down from like a Carrington type event, the main threat that we would have as humans would be from our current nuclear power plants that would fail very badly. And if you were anywhere near them or downwind from them, basically you'd be poisoned to death. We need to just get rid of all of those. And it's good luck with government in charge. It's not going to happen.
No, because the Nuclear Energy Commission is basically a a board for big energy, and they'll never let thorium through if they exist. I mean, honestly, if there was ever a thing Trump could do that would benefit society, it's to disband the Department of Education and the Department of Energy and basically let the market do its job.
Yeah, well,
then everybody would invest in thorium.
Right, and those plants would actually start to get built. Yeah, in the US, we have the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and it's an absolute joke. It's just, it's rubber stamping everything. They're not out to protect people, and that was the whole purpose of them, and it's a total joke.
And this is the point. If you had nuclear power plants, you wouldn't have to worry about doing stupid amounts of strip mining for necessarily batteries and all of this stuff. You could just have a generator in your house and you could buy it quite cheaply, the fuel for it. And all you'd need to buy is the thorium. And the thing about thorium is it's so non-reactive that its half-life is basically the current lifespan of the universe. So it's incredibly safe material, a lot safer than uranium by like magnitudes. So it's a no-brainer, but nobody in government will take it. And this is why it's got to come out. This is why we've got to get rid of it.
And also,
it breaks the rule because it takes your requirement to depend on the government away.
Well, and of course, hemp does all of that and is reproducible and biodegradable. It produces a huge amount of energy if you use it right.
I know.
Right, I'll make my house out of it, but I still want that house-size nuclear reactor that I never have to pay a bill for, and it never stops.
Yeah, because I'm not being funny. That thing is insane. All you need is thorium, and thorium is one of the most common elements on this damn planet. You mine it for a penance on your own property. It is so cheap, and I can't.
And clean. It doesn't destroy the environment.
Sorry, Nina?
Sorry, I was gonna say, is it cheap like right now? Where are you're based in North America? Right?
Well, Finian is. I'm based in England.
Okay, sorry. Oh yeah, well, the accent. Hello, Nina. I hear you guys saying like, "Oh, this is cheap. This is cheap." I'm like, "Oh my god, where are you guys at?" Nothing's cheap where I'm at, and but yeah,
The thing about thorium is it's common everywhere. It's like even more common than iron. You can basically mine it out of any hillside. It really is ridiculously cheap to get thorium in large quantities. It would not, that supply issue would not exist. That's the thing. You would have, there's so much on the planet. We have to strip mine the whole planet for centuries to make it run out. And I don't see that ever happening. And with it, you could actually potentially build something that is a nuclear-powered spaceship, for example. You could actually advance into the stars. And you could start doing asteroid mining for some of those rare earth elements that we can't get easily. That said, I think there was a mud pit on a Japanese island that now is being mined for shit tons of rare earth metals that we never thought we'd be able to find a good supply for. So that issue may wind up going down as well.
Right. Can I ask a question? That's kind of dumb.
Go ahead.
But so do you guys know anything about building islands? Who's doing that? China's doing that right now, isn't it?
South China
China's
Sea,
building
yeah.
islands
Building
in the South China Sea.
Is that
Yeah.
bad for the environment, or I said, it's a dumb question.
It's a good question.
But because
well,
I
it's
feel
changing
like
the environment.
yeah, it's a modification of environment that so if everybody start doing that, we'll probably not have an ocean anymore.
Well, here's the deal with islands
on how you
that
do
are
it.
man-made. It's often made out of very unstable sand. I mean, Dubai is sinking by the day.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I was going to say, don't use the Dubai model.
It needs a more sustainable model. That's what it needs.
Yeah. But the thing about China is they're pretty good at engineering, to be quite frank. I think that they've probably used something a bit more sturdy. But there's another area that people may overlook, and this is another thing about private enterprise. If you plan to build something, you can plan to build it environmentally and to make it not just environmentally friendly, but healing to the environment. And my case study for this is Malaysia, because it's a country I really want to visit simply because it's got this, it's got some amazing pieces of environmentalism in, I'm trying to think of which city it is. Singapore. They've got coral reefs that are man-made, that they basically designed the marinas to turn into coral reefs over time. As the stream and the current flowed through, the coral would seed themselves into the marina and thrive. And it worked. So there's now a coral reef underneath marinas in Singapore. They've got buildings which are basically gardens, and also places where they're basic giant metal trees that allow trees to grow on them. And that kind of thing is possible. In London, they've been talking about doing the Garden Bridge, and it's largely been privately driven. There's been a small bit of public funding, I think, that was thrown into the project, but it got widespread public support that they got private donations for it. And these things are popular. People like to say they aren't, but they really are. I don't know anybody who says, oh, I want to destroy this idyllic village because I think there might be a bit of shale oil underneath it. Nobody actively thinks that. They only think that when they're then shown, I'll give you $2 million for this piece of land that's 1 penny in size.
Or I enjoy paying $250 a month for my electric bill. Who says that? Nobody.
No. They say, I enjoy making $200 a month for providing electricity to a grid.
Right. I asked about the island thing because I was looking into the thing BitNation. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it.
What, building islands in the middle of the Pacific kind of thing?
One of the folks had a prototype of a island thing, kind of those big ass ships that have the carrier ships. Hello, Nina. Wow, I'm really slow today.
Container ships.
Yeah, yes. So they would become some type of physical place for this electronic city in a way. You know what I'm saying?
It's the concept of seasteading.
Exactly. You would subscribe to a nation that would have all of its blockchain or whatever's in that place. So that's why I was asking about how does it work? Because if you build so many of those, it would end up being, you know, not like sustainable. And it's just very interesting to me to think about those things because it's kind of new, you know, but
It's
scary
a
at
new
the same time.
concept. It's a
Yeah.
very new concept, to be honest. One of the things I don't have a problem with people trying to see. Say you want to try and ride the ocean waves for the rest of your life, be my guest. It's not personally my cup of tea, but
Yeah, the economic seclusion is the main issue I'd have. You take a large island, even like Puerto Rico, which we were just talking about in chat. Puerto Rico has problems with economic seclusion. So if you even have a super large ship, you would have that problem many times exponentially expanded. Like I would
all
rather
nations
do
have
like
that issue.
Liberland. Yeah, I would rather do like Liberland's goal and purchase land that's on land already, and then we just kind of carve out a micronation from that land.
Well, let me just read this because this is more from the Wikipedia page, and it discusses. I'm gonna botch all this French because I'm fucking German at heart, but Elisée Reclus, also known as Jacques Elisée Reclus, was a renowned French geographer, writer, and anarchist. He produced his 19-volume masterwork, more French, so bear with me. La Nouvelle Géographie Universelle, la Terre et le Homme. I believe that's how you pronounce it. A universal geography over a period of. Okay, cool. So I did the rest of it right.
Pretty much, it wasn't that bad.
Okay, all right, because I'm unintentionally good at multiple accents. Over a period of nearly 20 years, 1875 to 1894. In 1892, he was awarded the prestigious gold medal of the Paris Geographical Society for this work, despite his having been banished from France because of his political activism, according to the Kirkpatrick Soleil. His geographical work, thoroughly researched and unflinchingly scientific, laid out a picture of human-nature interaction that we would today call bioregionalism. It showed with more detail than anyone but a dedicated geographer could possibly absorb how the ecology of a place determined the kinds of lives and livelihoods its denizens would have, and thus how people could properly live in self-regarding and self-determined bioregions without the interference of large and centralized governments that always try to homogenize diverse geographical areas. For the authors of An Anarchist Fact, Reclus argued that a secret harmony exists between the earth and the people whom it nourishes, and when imprudent societies let themselves violate this harmony, they always end up regretting it. Similarly, no contemporary ecologist would disagree with his comments that truly civilized men and women understand that his or her, and I'm reading this with the bracket, he was saying under man and his because he's a fucking sexist pig, but that his or her nature is bound up with the interest of all and with that of nature. He or she repairs the damage caused by his predecessors and works to improve his domain. Reclus advocated nature conservation and opposed meat eating and cruelty to animals. He was a vegetarian. As a result, his ideas are seen by some historians as anticipating the modern social ecology and animal rights movements. Shortly before his death, Reclus completed L'Homme et la Terre. In it, he added to his previous greater work by considering humanity's development relative to its geographical environment. Reclus was also an early proponent of naturism. So in that, why not move to a territory that has the kind of environment you want? Like, I mean, I don't want to go like, you can always leave, but there are many places that would foster the sorts of things that many people want in specific. And I think that it would be beneficial if people would just adopt that in general.
I mean, in a anarchistic society, though, if you don't like it, leave technically works. Because you can technically just leave whatever you don't like and then go on. It's the only time it works. It doesn't work with states because they all have the same sort of stupid arbitrariness that nobody can stand, and they cover too big a region. But
Well,
when it
and
comes to
they're
anarchy,
and they're
it can
forced
vary from town to town, right on your doorstep.
right, and they're forced monopolists, which means that that like no matter whether or not people like them, they will still exist. It's like, you know, death and government, it's certainties. So
Is it though? That's the point. We've got to break that one because remember, slavery was a certainty.
right, that was a joke.
Yeah, I know, but
Oh, God.
remember the audience.
Of course, I mean, government is a certainty. It's going to crop up someday when people decide to stop being responsible, because anarchy fundamentally is a statement of responsibility. If we want a society where people won't seek archons, we need to be better than archons would be.
Yeah, to be fair.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. I'm trying to explain to Finian here one thing. I have another dumb question if you guys want me to ask.
There are no dumb questions.
Oh, yeah, this one is.
Only dumb
So-
people.
No, I'm not dumb, but the question is, so does like sound pollution count as part of the environment?
Well, it does if you
Ooh.
consider acoustic effects on plants.
Well, I'll consider
Yeah,
the
and-
acoustic effects on me and how I want to kill some of my neighbors. So we could talk about that.
Well, they're
to
Brazilian,
be
so
fair,
that makes sense.
to be fair, yes, and there is such a thing as light pollution as well. I mean, I do quite envy my some members of my family because they live in the mountains, and the night sky there is amazing. You can see every damn star in the whole Milky Way. But where I am, you can barely see Orion in the wintertime. So I quite like being able to look up at the sky and see the stars. But I don't get that option where I live. But again, that's where if you don't like it, move comes into play. You can always go into the mountains and get a clear view of the sky when it's not stormy. It's all a matter of perspective in the end, I guess. But if you look at sound pollution, that's one that actually can be covered quite easily just in a homeowner's agreement, effectively. By saying, I,
sure,
as
I
a
won't
neighbor,
sell you
will
this
not go
home.
over 80 decibels.
Right, and I will not sell you this home if you if you're going to trash up the neighborhood with it, you know, shit like
Yeah.
that. You could just sign an agreement upon purchase.
Yeah, exactly. Sale agreement. You, as a person selling this property, are expecting the other person to hold to a certain level of standards. If somebody
Exactly.
complains to you, you can hold them accountable. There's any number of ways to deal with it in anarchy. That's the beauty of anarchy.
So who broke the net first? The person making all the noise, or me for punching them for doing that?
If you've got a contract and they breach the contract, you just sue them.
No, there's no contract. We just live side by side.
You can't break his neck, love. I'm sorry.
Not his neck, it's just a little punch on the nose.
You can always use something that you quite like that nobody else does as a countermeasure. I always believe in reciprocity. So if somebody's blaring out obnoxious trance music, you blare out heavy metal, that kind of thing. You keep it to the level of response that you're getting. And if they complain, you very calmly tell them, well, I'm trying to sleep and you keep playing your music. I need this so I can sleep now.
You know, when I was a kid, there was this in Brazil they have these cars that go around town doing like advertising,
Mm-mm.
and it's very loud. So our parents got really mad, right, at this stuff because they just go around every day and like it's so very loud. It's disgusting. And what they told us is that we could start like throwing rocks at the car.
Oh my god.
So the guy would pass by and would start throwing rocks at the car, and they stopped, passing by our neighborhood. It's like, what do you think about that? Do you think I'm not even
Well,
joking. This is true. Every
sounds-
Brazilian out there knows it's true. They do advertising like this, and
they're
probably.
ruining your property, so you ruin theirs. I guess technically, it
Yeah, it sounds
stands.
like the cost of me advertising through them would have gone through the roof. Would have been,
Yeah, because
it would have become really expensive.
we're totally mad at them for doing this. There's like they think that they're getting people to like them. They're making us very enraged. You know, we're gonna hate that store if you do that. But the thing is, my point is, people don't see noise as a thing that breaks a nap or a thing that is how do you call it, a property. That's where I see, like, I have a difficulty with.
They may not in Brazil, to be fair,
Yeah.
but in other areas of the world, it is very important. I know that, like, some of my neighbors are get annoyed when there are loud noises next door. You do get people I mean, I know that in Spain, people will call the police if you make too much noise on a private property in a residential area, and they will have good cause to arrest you or evict you from the property if you're there for like Airbnb or anything. So it is quite it is in Europe and in America, it is considered pollution. I don't know if you'd consider the same thing in Brazil, but given the response of your neighborhood to those advertisers, I'd say yes, everybody considers this a form of pollution in their heart. They just may not see it, but you don't see light pollution until you can't see the sky.
You know, I tell these stories, but I kind of don't like it because I think it only serves the stereotype that we're all savages. But it happens. It happens.
Well,
I offer the solution to any of you out there. Are all savages?
from my point of view, reciprocity is a bitch. And if you really appreciate it, you understand that and you respect it. And because you respect reciprocity, you have to respect other people's rights. You have to respect that they are going to have their own opinions and their own beliefs, and you may not agree with those things, but you can't deny them those things.
It's one of the reasons why in the U.S. the suppressors are starting to become more popular, because I can use a suppressor on a firearm and I can fire my firearm quietly without interrupting my neighbors, and they love it. So yeah, it's actually gaining a lot of ground. Like, people are wanting to quote unquote legalize them because it makes your neighbors happy.
Yeah. And people don't get freaked out by loud noises going off all the time, because a gunshot is scary sounding. It's a big bang. People are trained to react to big bangs by ducking and covering and going, what the fuck was that?
Look, we can see like the difference between us. Like, you are almost like, you know, whispering with your British accent. Meanwhile, I'm like screaming.
Well, from my point of view, I'm talking at 1:45, and I'm going to be logging off very soon. So I'm reciprocity. I wouldn't expect people to be really loud if they were trying to have a conversation at 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. and I have somebody sleeping upstairs, so I don't want to disturb them either.
Oh, nice.
It's all about being respectful to people because they deserve it. And when they don't deserve it, you have to show them that they're being disrespectful to you. And if that is by throwing rocks at the cars that are advertising going down the street, and that's the only way you can drive the fuckers off, then that's the only way you can drive the fuckers off.
Yeah,
it's either that or have private security doing it.
Good to know. No, clear my conscience.
I'm not advocating that it's the only solution. By the way, there are other solutions.
I know it's not Brazil, but it's funny because that's one of the complaints about Panama that a lot of people go nuts and will leave. Like they'll be expats and they'll go there to live, and they will leave and go back to their home country because of the dogs and chickens. Because the dogs and chickens make so much noise that it drives the people nuts and they can't sleep at night. So is it like that in Brazil or no?
Yes, it is. It's very loud. We are loud as people. Like we talk loud. We just scream. We don't speak. We are yelling at each other. Our voices are loud. Our cars are loud. People are stupid. I am trying to talk. I'm, I'm sorry. Yeah. Anyways, and we are loud as a nation. It's insane. I don't even. And we live wall to wall. It's not like in the United States where you have your house and 5 miles away there's another house. No, we're wall to wall, and it's bizarre. I can hear everything my neighbors do and all the fights, and it's crazy. But
I've
at the same time, we are used to it to a certain point, which is bad. We shouldn't be, because I don't think if Americans don't survive like in Brazil, they know that we're allowed. When I first arrived in the United States, uh, my host family, they were like, you can speak, lower in a lower voice, and I didn't even notice I was yelling.
Well,
But
this is the thing. You get used to a certain volume and you adapt to that volume. I suspect that over time, if this continues in Brazil to have this level of noise, you'll wind up finding that you'll evolve actually thicker eardrums to protect yourself from the level of noise you're experiencing. I'm not lying, because if you look at things like oxygen and high altitudes, people in Nepal have a different genetic trait and different blood vessels to everybody else in the world because they live so fucking high up. Their bodies have had to adapt to that altitude. So the same thing could be said to noise or light or anything else, as our bodies are constantly evolving. And as we take input in and produce new generations out, we wind up creating new types of people. So Brazilians could wind up having very durable eardrums in the future because of this, or they could wind up going, nope, enough's enough. Let's have some peace.
And throw
Let's
some
listen
rocks.
yeah. Let's listen to the Amazon.
There's plenty of space on this planet, and that's one of the reasons to not live in an urban area. Yeah, because I've actually had the cops called on me before because I was playing music too loudly. And to have two cops knocking on your door and looking through your windows until I answered the door is actually very disconcerting. Just because I was making too much noise. So that's a reason right there to live out in the country where it's not a problem.
Right, where it's not a problem. And I particularly do not like too loud of music. I like I like normal volumes. I don't like loud noises. In Brazil, they buy a car and they make a new car and they make a hole in that part that the air goes out in the back so it can be louder. That's stupid. Like I don't understand. They have a love for noises. And that's an aggression, right, to the environment. I'm part of the environment. It's bad. This is something that I would have a huge problem, and I'm looking for solutions that do not involve rocks. But if they do, I
Well,
will throw them.
there's some really good advances in soundproofing. Like really good advances in soundproofing. Honestly, you can make a room completely soundless if you want. So that
in
it
my
has
defense, the
practically
music was not when people were normally trying to sleep.
fair enough.
Well, yeah.
But put it this way, there's some you can get floor underlay, for example. If you live in a building and you've got the cash, you can basically put it into the infrastructure itself. So if you want a soundproof or sound reduced house, you can get it. with just some proper windows and proper flooring and proper insulation in the walls.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take a huge amount, but it does cost that little bit extra. Now,
Right.
when you're talking about state housing and things, they're never going to spend that little bit extra to reduce that noise pollution for you.
Right. But how would it be then when I'm out? Out of my house, out of my castle, insulated castle. How
Noise
I'm
canceling
still.
headphones. That's the
Then I
only
would be looking like an
solution I've
autistic.
got.
No offense to the autistic people out there. I just,
Well, I mean, what I tend to do is if I'm trying to listen to something and I'm also trying to, like, commute, I don't like train noise when I'm commuting, and I tend to commute by train. So I have my headphones in. Now, mine are just earbuds, but they're enough to cancel out the train noise. They're not enough necessarily to cancel out all conversations or to cancel out hearing what people are saying. But I try not to because I don't like being nosy. I don't like to earwig on a complete stranger.
As a security professional, I recommend you not block out your environmental noise while you're on the move. Just saying.
No, I realize
true,
that, but then again, I tend to feel just generically safe because if anybody does try anything with me, I tend to just react a bit crazy. So and that has seen me through. Crazy always wins better than strength, I've found in my experience, because people don't know how to deal with it. It's the Chaos Emerald sort of effect.
You have to have 7 of those, though.
Oh, there he is.
You got to collect them all.
Yeah, you
Well,
gotta catch them all.
Yeah, I'm always here.
Catch them all and throw it under.
Well, I'm always here. I just don't think you guys want to hear me chewing while I encourage discussion.
Fair enough.
No, I don't want to hear that. That's a break of the nap, a violation of the sound pollution thing.
Now,
so keep it. Yeah.
Now, since I am talking now, I'm going to talk about anarcho-naturism. It's in the late 19th century, anarchist naturism appeared as the union of anarchist and naturist philosophy. Mainly it had importance within the individualist anarchist circles in Spain, France, Portugal, and Cuba. I think that's how that's pronounced. Anarcho-naturism advocated vegetarianism, free love, nudism, and an ecological worldview within anarchist groups and outside them. Anarcho-naturism promoted an ecological worldview, small eco-villages, and most prominently, I wasn't sure if that's predominantly or prominently, but prominently nudism as a way to avoid the artificiality of the industrial mass society of modernity.
Oh God!
Ugh.
No! I'm gonna have to stop you there.
I'm
gonna have to stop you there.
Naturist individualist anarchist saw the individual in his biological, physical, and psychological aspects and tried to eliminate social determinations. Important promoters of this were Henry Zisley and Emile Gravel, who collaborated in La Nouvelle Humanité, I believe that's how you pronounce that, followed by La Terrienne, Le Sauvage, L'Ordre Naturel, I believe something like that, and La Vie Naturelle. And all of these ones are books that you can read on the subject.
All right,
the only
one
word
of the
I heard
big
was nudism.
Yeah, as soon as you said the word nudism, that just sort of kills it for about 70% at least.
Regionalism. I mean, if you don't want to live in a nudist colony, don't move to a nudist colony.
You're gonna have to sit down on like a butt crack sweat. I don't like that.
Okay.
Gross.
Are we discussing whether or not we like it, or are we discussing whether or not it's valid?
It's not valid.
I'd say it's only valid in certain regions.
Sure. So don't go to a nudist colony if you don't want to live there.
Well, even the nudist colonies themselves can only be isolated to certain regions. You have to have the right climate for that shit.
Yeah, but
I'm not being funny. You're not going to find a nudist colony, say, in
Iceland.
Yeah, well, maybe, but you definitely wouldn't find it, say, in Greenland or Nova Scotia, perhaps, or the Alps, are well known for nudist rambles, but not nudist colonies. I mean, there's certain regions of the world that really like nudism. I don't know why. They just seem to have developed a taste for it. Particularly, I think Austria has a big following for this, and I think Argentina as well, for some reason, seems to have a lot of nude beaches, and so does France. It's all sort of intertwined with the nudism philosophy. I've never understood it because, I mean, one of the things Jordan B. Peterson talked about was how nudity in the Bible means you're fully exposed. So anything can happen to you, and you suddenly become very afraid, and you have to cover yourself up, and you have to defend yourself from all of that. And to be that exposed is sort of the existential problem of being human. So why the fuck would you embrace it that much? It just baffles me.
Indeed. Guys, I wanted to talk about like a dying species, that's the name of that, but I can't. I gotta go. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Wait,
I'll
what
be
time?
honest. I've got to log off as well, if I'm honest, because it's practically 1 a.m. here.
So thank you very much, Jeremiah, for inviting me.
And can you stick around, Vinian?
And
Wait, what?
Like, can you stick around?
I can understand what you're saying, Jeremiah.
I said,
Sorry.
could you stick around?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we got somebody else interested in coming on if we're still going when he gets done with his phone call.
Yeah, it's still early here. I'm good to go.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well,
All right,
see you
guys,
folks next
take
time.
care.
Let people know where they can find you.
on Twitter, at Estadocida, which is a state site in Portuguese. Yeah, I have a mustache.
Cool.
It's me. So thank you very much. And have a good night, everybody. It was a pleasure.
Be well.
Good night, Nina.
Bye-bye.
You can find me on Steemit and on Google Plus as well. Just look for the wolf.
Good night, sir.
Take care, guys.
Rest well.
Will do.
So the other guy is or gal is still planning on joining?
Yeah, one moment. Let me see. Let me nudge a bit here. And what do you have to say about naturism?
Hey, even the nudism stuff, as long as everyone's fine with it, I've never understood the problem people have with it. How does that do harm to me as an individual? Like, if you're naked, I really don't care. Like, and that's part of naturism.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think no victim, no crime is a really good way to describe that.
Yeah, and of course I'm a parent of children that range from 5 to 18 actually now. So, I'm not naked in front of my 18-year-old, of course, but being naked in front of a little kid, it's not a big deal. I don't understand the whole anti-naked thing, but whatever.
Well, it's because of religious vestiges, largely. People think that nudity is unclean, and they're encouraged to believe that. I would argue that that's a huge percentage of it.
Good old backwards religious beliefs.
Yeah, well, and also, of course, the idea that it is good protection, right? Like it's good protection from the elements, and maybe there's an element of like, I don't want to seem like I'm not interested in being a part of society as well. Like people could make the assumption that somebody being nude is making a statement about those who are clothed, and in many cases that is the case. But either way, on the level of getting closer to nature, there's a philosophy known as anarcho-primitivism. And anarcho-primitivism is a philosophy that that essentially tries to get as close to nature as humanly possible. And what it does is it tries to eliminate most technology, if not all, and like live in closer harmony with one's local environment. Like the Wikipedia page lays it out like this. Well, that is once it loads. It's an anarchist critique of the origins and progress of civilization. According to anarcho-primitivism, the shift from hunter-gatherer to agricultural subsistence gave rise to social stratification, coercion, alienation, and overpopulation. Anarcho-primitivists advocate a return to non-civilized ways of life through deindustrialization, abolition of the division of labor or specialization, and abandonment of large-scale organization technologies. Many traditional anarchists reject the critique of civilization, while some, such as Wolfie Landstreicher, endorse the critique but do not consider themselves primitivists. Anarcho-primitivists are often distinguished by their focus on the praxis of achieving a feral state of being through rewilding. And do you have anything to say about that? Have you ever heard of that before?
Actually, I follow a lot of these people that are pro getting back to nature and survivalists and so-called preparedness people. And my argument actually touches on what we were discussing earlier. And if you removed a lot of the government controls and the corporatism, you could have modern day technology and still live as close as possible to the planet and so-called nature as you could be. There's no reason to disconnect them. Like basically, I don't have to live like a caveman to not do harm to the planet. And I think we could live in balance with nature and still be connected to people and still, flourish as a species, i.e. human, and not do damage to our planet. And it seems like a huge disconnect. People think that it's like one or the other. Like, okay, we're either going to have this modern polluting society or we have to be living like cavemen, and that's the only two options. And of course it's a false dichotomy. Like, no, there really is a third option where you have, all the modern day appliances, and you can take a bath every day, and you're warm in the winter, and you have air conditioning in the summer, and you still survive, like, without doing damage to the environment. It's entirely possible, and I think it's a huge lie that people unfortunately believe on a large scale, that we can't do those things as humans. And I strongly believe we can, and people need to understand that it's possible. Like, there's nothing holding you back. You don't have to have $1,000 in bills a month to survive, and to survive happily and comfortably. It's not an either or option.
Well, right, especially if you're willing to live very, very simply, which is one of the key tenets of green anarchy. Any school of green anarchy is going to emphasize not living too complicated a life, because once you complicate it, you get encouraged to use the things that make that complication easier, and that often is very bad for the environment. Like, convenience is hugely discouraged in green anarchy. It's encouraged for people to try and figure things out for themselves. It's why they don't like specialization, because it means that you're very good at one part of it, but you're not good enough at the rest of it to hold your own in society. And it encourages everybody to rely on society that's very rampant and widespread.
Well, that gets back to the whole concept of humans. As humans, we're not ants. We should not be specialized. I shouldn't be a warrior ant or a collector ant or a queen. I am a jack of all trades, and as a human, I should know a little bit about a lot of things that makes my life and other people's lives around me as comfortable as possible, and of course peaceful. And like, my kids are a perfect example. Like, if they spend all their day playing video games and watching YouTube videos, they're a disaster. Like, even on a family level, it's not appropriate and it's not peaceful. We don't get along. I argue with them. I fight against them, and it's a problem. And of course, on a community level, it's even worse. Like, you can't live your life that way and coexist in a proper way with other people of your species. I mean, we're supposed to be functioning on a different and more intimate level. And you don't get that basically with all the modern distractions. And you should be able to have all the modern technology without that modern distraction. And I think there's a big distinction there. Like, people think like, oh, well, you've got to have Facebook and you've got to be, enamored with all the attention you get from the typical social media. And you don't. Like, all that stuff is poison to our society. And instead, you should be embracing all the local stuff and all the family-based and community-based stuff. And there's certainly a balance there to be had, and most people oversee it. They just, for whatever reason, they're programmed to the opposite of it, and they never grasp that truth. They don't see it.
Right. And they try not to see it because, I mean, realistically speaking, there are plenty of ways that are told to them pretty regularly to avoid poorly contributing to the planet and to avoid becoming so lazy that you do it by proxy or by accident. And plenty of people are told a lot of these ways, the setting.
You broke up a little bit there. I heard something and then setting. That was it. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Where did I go? They're very interested in keeping things the way they are because either they don't want to contribute positively, or they're very invested in contributing like non-positively, like negatively. They're very interested in continuing their lifestyle and keeping things set up so that they can continue their lifestyle, which is why, they've been told constantly about all these eco-friendly alternatives to whatever they're doing, and they've shared it on Facebook, but they don't use it.
Yeah, my argument's always been is we can not do damage to our environment and also work together on a peaceful and voluntary, in a peaceful and voluntary society with our other fellow humans without having all the other problems that are involved with current society. There's no reason to have one or the other, basically. You should be able to coexist and live happily with other people around you without all the other poison that's involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, but they can live more peacefully themselves. Like, people are constantly stressed, and it takes a toll on their nervous system and their immune system. And part of that stress is the idea that you constantly have to be bombarded with all this like modernity. And I think that people could be personally a lot more peaceful if they knew the ways to get back like closer to the wild. I'm not necessarily saying green anarchy or primitivism. I'm saying that that there are plenty of ways to work towards stateless environmentalism, and that those ways oftentimes would make people healthier anyway.
Well, that gets into a lot of the health and diet type stuff, and it is directly related with the way we interact with people and a lot of the tyrannical stuff that comes from the government. I mean, it gets back to the hemp thing. My spouse was, because of a doctor, addicted to a opiate drug, and the only reason why she got addicted to that drug is because the doctor was facilitating it. And the only reason why my spouse is alive today is because she had access to and ignored laws related to marijuana. She would not be alive today without that. And it's a natural medicine that bypasses all these other problems that opiates create for people. And something just as minor as that is a huge help for society. And
But
right
then
now,
if people started getting on marijuana instead of opiates, there wouldn't be an excuse to guard Chinese oil refineries and drills because they're close to poppy fields that people can also exploit.
Right. We wouldn't have to invade and defend poppy fields in Afghanistan either. And it's more than that too. It's natural medicine is in nature, and the government and the people related to the pharmaceutical companies, the same problem as I was talking about before. The large corporations basically are the largest lobbyists, and they have a vested interest in making sure that people aren't healthy. And one of the reasons, or one of the ways to be healthy, is to eat food that is naturally produced and available to people. And a lot of people don't eat that way, and they don't understand that that is the way they're supposed to live. I mean, you get away from nature and you get away from your natural diet as it was meant to be, then you are unhealthy. And that, unfortunately, is a profit to certain industries like pharmaceutical and other industries related to them. And yeah, as humans, we need to resist that basically, and work against it, and try to do and eat things that resist that and work against it, and eat and be healthy and not have the same problems that promote that profit model basically, that keeps us dying early and always being sick.
Exactly.
back.
And yeah, and what, like, I'm sure that you had plenty to say about all these subjects. I hope your connection is a little bit better now, Conan.
He still shows up as muted for me. I don't know if that's something you can change or not, but
Well, it is, but I think he wants to be muted right now for some reason. Maybe
Oh,
he's in the
okay.
other room. Like, I mean, because I can do this thing. And one moment. Yeah, he's still muted. Okay, so I guess I don't have like ultimate control over whether or not somebody is muted. That's actually kind of good
Perhaps
because it
you
means that they
shouldn't have
can.
ultimate control.
Sorry, what?
I said perhaps you shouldn't have ultimate control. That's a joke. Actually, I just had a delay. I couldn't get my phone to unmute. I was helping my buddy move some stuff. Sorry. Am I coming through clear?
Yeah, you're coming
Yes.
through clear now.
Ah, there we are. That's nice. Thank you for having me back.
Although there is a buzz, I'm not sure what that is. Maybe there's a ringtone on your phone, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure you have plenty to say about the subjects we discussed, especially since we got into naturism, and that's like, nudity and using rocks as tools and shit like that. So, I mean,
Oh well, don't get me wrong. I'm not one of. I have nothing against iron and steel, and I like a coil spring and a screw as much as the next fella. But let's be honest. The state is not going to naturally dissolve into this harmonious anarchy. It's going to thrash and flail, and it's going to dig a really big, ugly hole, literally and figuratively, from a societal standpoint. When that happens, you're not going to have access to things that you take for granted, like Phillips head screws. You're good. So knowing how to do very, very basic things, the same things that can be a very rewarding life, can become a matter of, well, it's better to have it and not need it, sort of deal. I'm a fan of it because,
well, okay. So all I was gonna say is like, right, because and that's one of the things that was also brought up on the Wikipedia page is not specializing. Don't have one thing that you're good at. Don't be the guy who makes screws. Be the guy who makes screws and also knows how to cook and also knows how to build a basic structure and shit like that. Know enough that you wouldn't have to rely on like an industrial, like, cancerous civilization. Don't be a virus,
that's why I want to be like Skip the Free Rifleman when I grow up.
Well, yeah, I always say you should be a jack of all trades, but then pick one or two areas where you're going to specialize in. That's not the only thing you do, but those are the things that you're going to focus on. And then, of course, that makes you profitable and marketable in an open and free market.
I am a firm believer that the term jack of all trades, master of none, was created by some commie who was not able to keep up with the Renaissance. You can be a master of everything you do if you're willing to apply yourself hard enough and long enough and if there's a need for it, if you feel that need is adequate. The only difference between an expert and a master is that an expert and a master will both perform the same job. A master can do so quicker and more efficiently. So I agree with your sentiment. Just I'm only criticizing that particular expression, the jack of all trades, master of none. Exactly,
Right.
that can do a halfway job on a whole lot of things. But the goal is to be a Renaissance man, to understand multiple features. Let's be as real as we can, like you said, in a world where the population is likely to be decimated and people's actual physical and mental abilities are going to become your lifeblood, because as the natives have told us for the last 100 years, you can't eat money. In those kind of situations, someone way smarter than I once said that specialization is for insects. Humans need to be adaptable. You don't have to be a jack of all trades. You can be a master of many, but just keep in mind any trade, any skill that is required that you do not have the ability to perform, you will be dependent upon someone else for that. So you got to keep that in mind. And that's also a really good reason to be very selective of who your friends are for that very reason. It's very important to make sure the people that you associate with don't just talk a good game, to make sure that they live it, which is one of the reasons I enjoy spending time with you guys. I've learned so much.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. And like, for example, I am a residential security expert, and I've read every book on the subject, and that is a purposeful area of study for me. And it's something that unless you did that, you'll never basically know as much as I'm going to know about the subject. And it makes it so that I have more knowledge than the average person basically on that subject. So it it helps me in a way that, other people are never going to know as much, and it doesn't matter too much because they can pretty much survive without my knowledge. But if somebody's seeking something in specific, like, hey, how do I do this best? I'm probably going to be able to give them that answer compared to some stranger off the street or them just randomly like Googling it on the internet.
Sure, I can keep the lights on all night. You can keep people in the club from getting shot up, and our boss pays us both handsomely. I can dig it.
Well, and of course, like there's the similar notion to like if you want to survive where other people can't, you need skills that they don't have. So try to find something that isn't being done instead of trying to be better than the other 20 people you know who are doing it. That's what I would say.
Yeah, it gets back to the old communities on a smaller scale, like medieval days. You'd have a blacksmith and a family and maybe one competitor to them, but everybody in the village would not be doing blacksmithing. By necessity, some people would have to be doing botany, and some people would have to be doing herbalism, i.e., medicine. You would have to have some specialization, but everybody would know how to survive. Everyone would know what to eat and what not to eat, and a basic self-defense and things like that. And even today, like getting back to the whole green environmentalism, that's kind of the model that you have to follow to prosper as our species. Like the larger model it gets, the more dependent, unfortunately, people get on other people. And it's gotten to the point now where like most people are dependent on a whole vast amount of people for their basic survival. And that's, I
A
don't
whole
think
vast amount of people forced to be there too.
yeah,
They're not
yeah.
used to advertising why people should support them. They're used to just getting it because it's forced.
Right. Yeah, exactly. They're dependent on it, and they also expect it without any effort on their part. They don't understand the economics behind it, unfortunately. And one of these days, probably soon, that whole system's going to collapse, and they're going to pay a heavy price for it, basically.
Yeah, well, and not to mention the fact that they'll have to start paying that price, because that's the real shit. People only support government because it allows them to delegate responsibility to other people, and they've been told that that's good. The whole sharing is caring bullshit that they taught you in the imported Prussian school system. You know, I mean, if you can tell people that it's ethical to tax people, then you can tell them that it's ethical for them to live in a system where they don't have to worry about where their next whatever is coming from. If they do have to worry about it, you could like fucking, you know, if they do have to worry about it, then you could justify like asking people for donations, or asking people to set up charities, or asking people to set up mutual aid networks or something like that. But you couldn't justify like a theft system to fund the next traffic light.
Yeah, it gets back to the old ways too. Again, talking about the whole green environmentalism thing, where everyone was codependent in a good way on their neighbors, and it brings up the good example of one of my friends that's like heavily interested in like blacksmithing and smithing in general. I'm not interested in those things, but that person's skill set is, whether I want it to be or not, is still of very high value to me and my survivability. So I'm going to voluntarily interact with that gentleman or lady, and I'm going to trade and barter with them to get the things that I need to survive out of life, and they will do the opposite with me. We can't all be specialized experts in every field. It's just not possible.
Well, I suppose there's truth to that. But there are something that you and Jeremiah both mentioned, and there's a point to relate to those. Your point being that we can't all be masters of all the trades that are going to be important. So there is going to be some. You used the term codependent. I like the term interdependent. Codependent means I can't function without this other person. Whereas interdependent means that multiple people are dependent on multiple people for different resources, and that's a healthy community. Like you said, you have the village black. I'll use your metaphor because it was a good one, a solid one. You have a village blacksmith. You may have one or two other smiths that do more basic rudimentary stuff, but you'll have one blacksmith, and it often passes down from family to family simply for because supply and demand, that you have the specialist blacksmith that can do the detailed things like making nails, horseshoes, complex stuff, but one of those, and Jeremiah made a point that with this idea of government dependency, people lose this natural desire to appreciate, this natural ability to appreciate these skills. Well, if this guy didn't provide this, I wouldn't have it. There's the common denominator between both of those is that in any homestead or farming situation where people would trade with their neighbors, they do rudimentary blacksmithing at home. There's not a complete dependency on one guy to perform smithing. Now, in this day and age, there would be. Someone like Skip would be priceless. Someone like you who is an absolute expert, not just at keeping bad guys out, but at helping maintain a secure environment without restricting and violating people. That would be absolutely imperative in a free society. And it is something that we are, as a society, we're not equipped for. So someone like you would become absolutely vital. But in 2 generations, that wouldn't be the case. People are able to do these basic things at home. And for that reason, your blacksmith can't transfer his service because, hey, dude, I'll just go home and do it myself, man. It's not worth these labor. So people be having some self-sufficiency. What that does is it drives your neighborhood blacksmith. And this applies to any market. I'm using blacksmithing because I'm a simple guy. It's a simple metaphor, and it's a good example. But that pushes your blacksmith to have more refined practices, more affordable prices, better quality, and you'll get your stuff produced faster, because if you have to wait too long, you'll just go home and do it yourself. So I think a common solution there is that we need to be interdependent upon each other. And the only way you do that is, you don't appreciate the value of, custom blacksmithing until you've tried to do it yourself. And then you realize, wow, my arm really hurts a lot. I think I would just rather trade some rutabagas for this.
Yeah, you only have so much time in the day, basically. So are you going to spend that mastering blacksmith, or are you going to do it what you're going to spend it doing what you're most passionate about? And
Exactly. We all have things that we're naturally acclimated towards, and those natural strengths are what we can pursue. And there will be someone else whose natural strengths cater to our natural weaknesses. You're a great blacksmith. I'm a good farmer. You're hungry plows. This is a good thing. And it does work well. Having rudimentary skills is important. But like you said, there's nothing wrong with specialization as long as you don't allow it to limit you like our society has now. So yeah, there is some truth to that.
yeah, like you should be able to survive on your own without those specialists, basically. When you start depending on specialists, that's when the whole society breaks down. And we have today that exponentially worse. Like everybody is dependent on specialists, when really we should not. We should back that off, basically, and be able to survive without that specialist blacksmith. I don't need a blacksmith to make me a Damascus steel dagger or sword. I need to be able to make a horseshoe, or basic utensils to be able to cook over a fire pit. And the problem we have today is everybody, the majority of people that we know, they're so dependent on outside specialists that they can't survive without them. And yeah, absolutely, that should not happen. And the model we have today is bad.
What you're discussing, as we say, it would naturally encourage. Well, that's the reason that we advanced to the point that we are now, was because there was demand for that. And that demand was, you have to be able to survive before you can thrive. It's just the way it is. So yeah, there's got to be a fundamental self. You should be able, if we are able to sustain ourselves, eat, sleep, maintain basic human relationships, and have shelter, then from that point forward, that's survival. From once you've got that labeled, the first thing the human mind is going to want to do is, how do I thrive? How do I make it slightly less hot during the day? How can I get more food? How can I have an excess of food to trade for stuff I like? So yeah, that's I think rule number one for advancing anarcho-environmentalism is the encouragement there. So volunteer for my own, I know I'm sounding like Ayn Rand here, I do it for my own personal gratification, because I know that I'm a pretty good person, considering there's a lot of bad people out there. It makes me feel good about myself, but it makes me feel good to do these good things. And we should simply tell people that people will adopt these ideas because they want to keep up with the Joneses, and because it makes you feel good to know you've done something good. That's the basic truth of human nature.
Well, and without the government system that we have in place today, cooperation and voluntary interaction is the safest strategy to use when you're interacting with other humans. Even as it is today, I brew my own mead and I barter and trade with other people for their services and goods. I don't need the government to do that. And it's like a very basic, on a low level human society skill. And every other people that I interact with, one guy has chickens and he gives me eggs in exchange for mead. The other guy might do something else for me. And that type of interaction does all the things that we want. It's peaceful, it's voluntary, and it doesn't do any damage to the environment. So like the whole
right, but all of this is
environmentalism.
hypothetical. You don't actually do. Yeah, they're all hyper. I'm being your attorney and throwing a disclaimer out there. If you did do those things, though, you would totally pay the tax value on them, I'm sure. Because, if you're a good citizen and stuff, and you would never try to skim the IRS or anything.
Yeah, I'm in Virginia, and I cannot even barter or trade alcohol for anything other than a verbal thank you. That's the
Yeah.
law as it is now, as ridiculous as it is. But
Yeah, that's why this is all just
I just get around
hypothetical
it.
talk.
Yeah, of course.
Or just run your own bar.
Yeah, all the luxury items basically, like you're pretty much guaranteed in a societal collapse or regular day-to-day to life. Those are the types of things that everyone will always be interested in, which is, that's one of the good skill sets to pick if you were in the business of picking one.
Yeah, everybody's got a particular inebriant that they like, or a particular chemical thing that they like. I've been addicted to caffeine since I was 4.
Yeah, exactly. If it's not alcohol, it's caffeine. If it's not caffeine, it's sugar. There's always something that you're going to be able to trade with other people.
And if it's not any of that, then at least you got Jesus.
Sorry, not in the business of trading religious ideas.
Well, that was the joke.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because religion is a joke, but I could go on for a while on that. But yeah, I mean, I think that what a lot of people don't get is that there's a mix, and that realistically, you might not want to go full nudist colony bashing things with rocks, but that doesn't mean that you can't find some sort of like greater level of balance. And not being perfectly balanced, well, most people won't be, not until the great culling happens at some point in the future, which it will if people can't fucking like work their shit out.
Well, even in the Great Depression, the estimates and some foreign scientists that have actually studied this have found way higher numbers. On the U.S. side, they estimate it to be 5 million people, and I think the population at the time was 70 million. So at 70 million, 5 million people died in the Great Depression. And what's coming, and I'm a firm believer of this, whether, other people want to believe it or not, what's coming is what's going to be called a greater depression. And right now, everything is flipped. And for the Great Depression, 90% of the people lived in rural areas and they were not dependent on outside sources for food. They had their own gardens. And now it's the exact opposite. 90% are in urban areas and they have no idea how to grow their own food.
And they've got a currency based on debt that lets them continue this skyrocketing thing of bad humanity.
Yeah, and what's coming is going to kill a lot of those people. There's no escaping it, basically. You talk about a culling, it's coming. It's going to happen. It's going to be really ugly, too.
I keep on telling people, quote, rivers are going to run red.
Yeah, I like the come up with a better name for it. Like the Greater Depression is good, but I think I don't know if you guys can tell or not, but I'm kind of if Skip ran for president, I think I'd lose my virginity and vote for the guy for the first time ever. But I would call it the Great Collapse, and that is going to happen for the exact reasons you mentioned. It's during the Great Depression when we lost, based on your data, and it sounds to be about right, we lost slightly under 10% of the population. Well, slightly under 10%, 5 million out of 70 million. And the reason we had and I guarantee you, I don't have the data in front of me, it's your stats, but I guarantee you the majority of those deaths were in industrialized areas, which were affected the most. I'm here to tell you the majority, when the recession in 2008 hit, when I was making really good money, contracting in the Florida Panhandle, where all the condos were going up. Now it's not a big metropolitan city, but it is an industrialized city. It was based solely on construction, development, and tourism. And as soon as the economy slowed down, like these guys were they were on the pulse. They were 2 heartbeats behind Wall Street. As soon as the recession hit, everything stopped. Like everybody got laid off. And I went from making a whole lot of money and having a ridiculous amount of cash to trying to figure out whether or not I was going to have to put my kids in a homeless shelter. Now, that was just a little blip in the economic bubble. What's going to happen next is going to be so devastating that I honestly do not see an effective way for us to come out of it. We're not going to, it's going to be like, imagine if Rome had an industrial revolution. Do you really think it would have took 400 years for them to decline before they stockpiling on foods and medicine and ammo, though the medicine and ammo I'm big proponents of. But what it really means is being mentally and psychologically prepared to be dependent upon yourself. And of course, take every full opportunity to utilize the services available to you by anyone that you're able to encounter. When the collapse happens, anybody you meet, for better or worse, are probably pretty equipped survivors, or else they would not be among the living. But being dependent upon is that you can function and survive, but being dependent upon yourself means not falling into someone else's pocket or becoming the foot soldier of some other petty tyrant who would simply continue to do what the state has done on a much smaller scale. Those things are going to be important. And another thing to mention is, like you guys said, the great culling. A lot of people are going to die. I mean, there's going to be a lot less people around, and that means human life is going to become, you're going to have to take what you can get. So we need to, the best way that you can prepare yourself, in my opinion, sure, you can stockpile everything you want, but what we're doing right now, speaking to as many people as we can, educating as many people as you can to give every single individual out there the best opportunity to make intelligent decisions, whether they're anarchists or not, because let's be real, when all this shit pops off, we're all anarchists now, whether you like it or not. So the best thing we can do is make sure that people understand there is a platform there. You can survive this. You don't need some big imaginary brother that doesn't really exist to take care of you. And the sooner people start warming up to that idea, the more prepared they're going to be for the inevitable.
Yeah,
great. Yeah, one of my best friends on Steemit, his handle is GrowPro. And I'm always giving him accolades because his whole premise, his whole idea and theme of being on Steemit and really being online at all is to teach people how to grow food. And he jokes about it and we both laugh, but really what he's doing is saving lives in the future. And he understands it. I mean, he's not like dismissing it entirely and laughing it off like it's not a big deal, but literally what he's doing is he's saving people's lives in the future because he's teaching them to do something that unfortunately a lot of people right now don't know how to do, and in the future that skill set is going to be very valuable. And like we were talking about earlier, that is not a specialized skill. Everybody needs to know how to grow your own food, and that's what he's teaching people to do. So that kind of stuff is very important. And that gets, again, it gets back to the theme of the whole hangout tonight is, green environmentalism. You should be able to grow your own food without polluting the environment. People need to know how to do that basic skill. Everyone should.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a farmer. I can do sustenance farming. My dad did it. I'm a warrior. It's what I do. I'm a fighter. For better or worse, I mean, I have other skills and I prefer not to fight and harm people, but that's what I'm good at. I've shot a lot of people and they haven't shot me yet. So when I come across someone like him in a post scenario and I see what he has, what I see, this is something worth defending. This is something worth having. This is something worth fighting for. Now, of course, I'm sure for every one guy like me, there's going to be 10 other guys that say, hey, this is some shit we can take, right? That's true. That's why guys like myself are somewhat important. We're again, not killing people is not a specialized skill either. Everyone should know how to, because you're probably going to have to. But and I don't glorify it. I simply call it for what it is. As long as people have different ideas, people will try to hurt others. But when I see something like that, that's not my skill, but I appreciate it for the value it can bring, and I'm willing to lay my life on the line in that scenario to protect that guy's ability to teach people how to do that. It's a really, really important thing.
Hello?
Did I
Everybody
get
still there?
booted again? Yeah,
Nah,
can you hear
you're
me?
still there.
Yeah, we're still here. Yeah, I'm more of the warrior type too. I can't see myself out there as the farmer, but I'll do it if I have to. But like you were saying, Conan, I'm more of the person that's going to be out there defending the community against predators than not, basically. And that's always
Well, I
been
mean,
my skill set too. So
sure, you can't trust I'm just like you. For every guy like you and I, there's got to be at least 10 guys out there that have close to the same skills with the worst intentions possible. Uh, there is some grain of merit to this idea that, well, without government, we just have a bunch of warlords. No, well, you wouldn't. You'd have a couple, you know, you'd have a few small manageable ones. But yeah, there's always going to be an element of evil out there. And consolidating that evil and paying taxes to it isn't the way to resolve it. You're basically just paying inflated protection money. But yes, people like you and I, we need something it's in our nature to fight. Period. And without a common ethical compass, we will use that natural proclivity to violence for negative ends. That's where morals come in. And when we see something like what your friend's trying to do, we see that that's something valuable. Like when we see a guy move into a village and start teaching kids how to read and basic mathematics, that's important. We'll protect that because we see the value that's there. It's intrinsic. It's in our nature. That's why we're fighters, because we're protectors. It's the part of our DNA that chose to take the dominant role, or perhaps a part of our psychology growing up, but as long as there's something out there that's good, people are going to want to take it. And as long as that happens, there's people like you and I that can appreciate it and find it worth protecting. And that goes back to what we were talking about being interdependent on each other. There's a lot of people out there that aren't fighters. There's a lot of people out there that have never fired a rifle in their life, and those guys, sure, they're not much good in a fight until someone gets shot. Oh yeah, and this guy is, he's not a violent guy, but he's a first class surgeon. He'll get that bullet out of you and stitch you up real fast. So interdependence on people, utilizing your skills, these things are important. And it's really, really important for us to stress to people that this is something you can do all by yourself, totally holistically, without any centralized oversight. Yeah, if you have a doctor and he's a bad doctor, you're not going to keep that guy around. You're going to get a new doctor. You don't need a board of medicine to tell a small community that, no, you can't have this guy. We will figure it out on our own. And the sooner we can educate people to that fact, the better off we are. And let's be real, the media and the governments in places like the UK and America, they're really making it easy on us.
Yeah, well, and not to mention the fact that like the closer people can get to that level of interdependence on a local level, the more they have to look people in the face, the better service we'll get and the better people will be to the people who provide it. This sort of culture by proxy is a goddamn problem.
yeah, and there's no special protections or double standards either, even all the way down to the security service. I mean, you don't, without special protections and those double standards, all that stuff, all the problems and the abuses that we have today go away. That gets back to the security and warriors doing it, and services like being a surgeon or even a gardener. If you're not providing a proper service to your community, then they're not going to allow you to do it. It's you're not going to be protected by some special system or laws that allow you to get away with crimes that other people can't get away with. It just wouldn't happen.
Right. Well, and you wouldn't be able to monopolize the force of doing something like that in an effort to control whether or not society can supplant you.
Right, and profit from that monopoly.
Right. I mean, realistically, the only reason more people aren't involved in like countless industries is because they don't think they can. There's a barrier of entry. There's licensing to organizations that'll sometimes throw out a license to anyone because there's no, fucking accountability. But there's still that like artificial thing that gets people like, afraid to even approach it. Like everybody's just on the fence about so many things, and making decisions isn't easy because society has built all these barriers in their way and makes it as fucking inconvenient as possible. And that's a problem. That's one of the reasons that I've always sympathized with was sort of a more naturist thing, because if you want a fruit, you go find the tree that's near you that produces that fruit, and you pull the fruit off of it, and then you have the fruit. You don't need to worry about like distribution and analytics and like, how best to provide it to like millions of people, because you just know where that tree is and you find it and you take the fruit. Like Louis CK's routine about how it's growing in the ground, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, yeah. His little skit. He's like, God gave you food. It's like all over the ground. What's the problem here? Yeah, and actually, I dabble in herbalism and I study foraging too. So literally, we are surrounded by food, and it's kind of sad that the majority of the humans, they walk day to day down the street, assuming they're not in an urban environment where there are no plants and no grass and no foraging to be done. The majority of the people, even not in that environment, they're walking past all of that stuff and they have no idea anymore what benefits they have. They're completely clueless. Like, oh, okay, I got to go to the grocery store to buy food. It's like, no, literally, it's right there for you to get, and you're still starving to death. It's madness.
Right. Well, that is what this state is. It's pure madness. It's madness in raw form because it's asking a very aggressive group of people to protect your interests.
Yeah, and they'll gladly do it for a very large profit.
For a very large profit that they don't need to worry about a good business model to get. For a very large profit that they will force on you because you can't avoid paying for it.
Yeah, and all the control that goes along with that.
Yeah. Well, does anybody have any final words? Because we are getting close to the 3-hour mark.
I have a final word. I would like to point out rule number one is that like you made a point about barrier to entry for businesses, and that works on environmental productivity too. People don't like the idea of fracking, but they want to be able to heat their house. So I can't stress enough the benefits that come from gasification. For less than $300, you can very easily build a gasifier. It's literally a fire on top of a trash can with some holes drilled in it. It's literally that simple. And you can, I'll throw some stats at you. There's a fellow in Kentucky. He heats his entire house. He uses his gasifier only to heat his radiator, to heat his home. That's all he uses it for. He's got a 5-bedroom house. He heats his entire home almost year round. And it costs him less than $200 a year. And just on excess wood, literally on trash. And you can access your own natural gas. Now, in northern states in America, this is a really, really, really big deal. The amount of money that people spend on natural gas is obscene. And that is one of the, of course, petroleum and oil is definitely the number one, but fracking and access to natural gas, not the emissions itself, but accessing it, is one of the most invasive things we can do to our environment. We've all heard the stories about in Pennsylvania being able to turn on your water spigot and take a lighter and stick it against your water spigot with water running, and you watch the water catch on fire. You see these horror stories. And that's a very easy way to avoid that. It does not put a lot, but the point is that it's easy and it's effective. Most environmentally friendly things are not. They're usually cumbersome, a lot of work, not very effective, or they cost a lot of money. And this is what deters people. So we need to show people that the best way to convince people that folks will take the decision and the initiative to be more environmentally friendly is to show them that it can be done easily. It can be done efficiently. It can be done cost effectively. Gasification is one example, and it is the biggest one that I would hold just because it's the one I know the most about. But I think that's the number one step, the most effective step, in addition to all the other things we discussed, is showing people that it can be done efficiently, and it can be done without all of the effort that a lot of people think you have to put in.
And on that level, gasification is something that you can like compost whatever's left, right?
Absolutely. The best part about gasification is you don't even have to compost what's left. What's left over is charcoal. It's biochar. Take it and go grill you a steak. That's that. The remnants are charred. So you can then turn around and use that for controlled heating purposes, cooking and other things of that nature. A lot of people use biochar for, well, I don't have to tell you what people use charcoal for, but yes.
What about you, Finian?
That is the other benefit, is that even the trash is useful.
Yeah, basically, with the technology that we have today, even like biogas and stuff, I mean, like, you're throwing away your plant fiber and your scraps from your dinner, and you have animal waste and human waste, and nobody's using like the methane gas that could come from an easy collector, like a low technology collection system that would benefit from that. And there's videos on YouTube that teach you how to do it and all, but and cheap collection systems that will allow you to do it. Even simple stuff like that, like thermal heating of water, there's no excuse basically to be dependent on a grid and to live your life in a way that is polluting to other people. Like, we have the technology and the knowledge today to live as humans in a modern society without going back to like caveman technology. You're going to have the internet, you're going to have electricity, you're going to have all the modern technology and conveniences, and you're going to do it in a way that is net positive to you. It's not going to cost a lot of money, and it's going to be environmentally friendly, and you're going to be able to do it without depending on anything other than yourself. Like, at the max, you might have a small community level, and that's it. And of course, as we all know, as anarchists, that's the best type of community government. Government is best the local as much as you can get it. And of course, that's down to the individual, but at the individual level, it's kind of hard to survive. Like we were talking about specialization earlier. Maybe at a community level, you might need other humans to survive at a high level of comfort. And that's fine, because at community level, everybody still cares about each other. Your neighbors, you love each other's children, and you have a communal benefit and desire to all prosper together. And really, I think that's the model that we should be working towards.
Absolutely. And I'm glad to see that that so many people showed up. This was actually a very successful stream. The next stream is going to be pretty interesting because I'm always saying fuck the police and that all cops are bastards. So I want to see if we can bring in enough people who would possibly be interested in discussing non-government police and non-government like neighborhood defense solutions. And it'll possibly also cover non-government national defense, because realistically it's all just a different neighborhood. So if anybody wants to come to that, then feel free to shoot me a message. We have 9 slots available. I'll let you know if you can show up. But anyway, be well, everyone. And I think this was a very good shit shooting Sunday. I'll see you next week.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good night.